Chapter 209. Looking up at London on the other side of the space, Rog suddenly laughed, a little happy and a little surprised. Malekith's operation was indeed beyond his expectations. He never thought that Malekith would use ether particles to forcefully modify reality and create a celestial convergence phenomenon that only belonged to Svartalfheim and Earth. "You're really a genius." Rog had thought that the battle between him and Malekith would continue for a while. But now, it seemed that it would not be long before this battle came to an end. When the celestial convergence phenomenon between Svartalfheim and Earth occurred, Malekith could clearly feel the changes in the ether particles. Under the influence of the celestial convergence, the ether particles became extremely active. Under Malekith's control, the liquid ether particles stretched out like dark red tentacles toward the space channel in the air. As long as the ether particles were connected to Earth through the space channel, the power of the ether particles would increase exponentially. The celestial convergence would not last long, but even if it was only for a few seconds, it would be enough for him to completely eliminate Rog. Rog did not stop Malekith's plan to use the ether particles to connect the two countries. He even asked the shadow clones to stop attacking so that Malekith could have an undisturbed environment. The moment the shadow clones stopped attacking, Malekith sensed that something was wrong. But he did not think too much about it. Instead, he controlled the ether particles to surge toward London. Rog took the initiative to remove most of the shadow clones, leaving only the four closest to Thor, Loki, and the others. Then, under his signal, 3 shadow clones took away Thor, Loki, and the other 2. As for the cursed warriors, they were stopped by the last shadow clone. When the shadow clones took Thor and the others away from the plains, Rog did not stay idle. He used Thunder Body Blink and quickly left the plains. Malekith sensed that Rog and the others had left. In his opinion, this was just Rog's final struggle. No matter where Rog escaped to, even if he ran to the other side of Svartalfheim, the terrifyingly strengthened ether particles could directly erase the reality of his existence. Although the ether particles that only connected Svartalfheim and Earth could not extend their power to the entire universe like they did when they connected the 9 kingdoms. However, there was no problem in expanding the scope of reality modification to the entire Svartalfheim. No matter how fast Rog retreated, it was impossible for him to leave Svartalfheim in such a short time. In other words, when the ether particles officially connected to Earth through the spatial channel, it would be the moment of Rog's death. However, Malekith soon discovered that Rog was not as crazy as he had imagined. After expanding the distance between the two to about 3 kilometers, Rog stopped. The shadow clone stopped as well. "Rog, what's going on?" Thor asked Rog with a look of displeasure. Seeing that the battle between him and the cursed warrior was about to end, Rog's shadow clone suddenly appeared in front of him, then picked him up and ran away without saying a word. "It's nothing, I just don't want you to be affected by the inexplicable power." At this distance, he could no longer see Malekith's appearance, but he could still see the ether particles flying towards the spatial channel. "Aren't you going to stop Malekith? Once the ether particles connect to Earth, no one will be able to stop Malekith." Thor's understanding of the ether particles was no less than Rog's. He was also very clear about the consequences of the ether particles connecting to Earth. "Don't worry, Malekith doesn't need us to stop him," Rog said with a calm face. If it weren't for the fact that his wild laughter did not match his Haori, he would have laughed like the 4 Uchihas laughing brothers. Although they were not very relieved with Rog's answer, at this time, they had no way to break through the 3 kilometers in an instant. They could only watch the tentacle-like ether particles pass through the spatial channel and go to the sky above London. When the ether particles were successfully connected to Earth, Malekith felt a powerful force that he had never felt before. This force was beyond his imagination, and it gave him a strange feeling of omnipotence. If he wanted, he could even turn Svartalfheim into Asgard in an instant. It was not until now that Malekith finally realized how powerful the ether particles were. This was a power comparable to the gods of the universe, and this was the law of the universe that could not be resisted. After trying to calm down, a cruel smile appeared on Malekith's face. He did not want to erase Rog in an instant. He wanted to let Rog feel extreme pain, and then take away his life bit by bit. Little Earthling, repent. Repent for being my enemy, repent for being the enemy of the ether particles, repent for being the enemy of the dark elves. The image of Rog wearing a Haori appeared in Malekith's mind. He slowly raised his right hand and put his middle finger and thumb together. Snap! Without any hesitation, Malekith snapped his fingers confidently. With the snap of his fingers, the ether particles in his body also shone with a dark red light. Then, nothing happened. What was going on? Why didn't the ether particles' ability to change reality take effect? Why didn't that annoying earthling turn into a slave of pain and come to me? The proud look on Malekith's face was quickly replaced by doubt. Unwilling to give up, he snapped his fingers a few more times and continued to urge the ether particles. But the result was no different. Rog, who was 3 kilometers away, did not suffer any changes. The ether particles seemed to have completely lost the ability to change reality. This was impossible. This was absolutely impossible. How could the ether particles fail? This was an infinity stone that was born with the universe. Malekith's mind was full of doubts. At this time, he finally remembered a reality that he had ignored. Why did the 9 great nations have such a cosmic wonder as the convergence of celestial bodies? It was not because the 9 great nations had not met for a long time, so everyone made an appointment to form a straight line and say hello to each other. This was a natural phenomenon caused by the mutual influence of the 9 great nations. This was the same as the moon revolving around the earth and the earth revolving around the sun. It was a natural law caused by the mutual influence of the 3 planets. Malekith used the ether particles to forcefully change reality and create a space channel between Svartalfheim and the earth that would only be created when the celestial bodies of the 9 great nations converged. His behavior was like pushing the first domino, causing a series of complex and powerful chain reactions between the 9 great nations. Rog did not need to stop Malekith, because the 9 great nations would tell Malekith what it meant to not offend the heavens. Chapter 210. You did not modify the reality of Svartalfheim and Earth. You are fighting against the 9 great worlds with your own strength. If possible, Rog would like to say this to Malekith. However, judging from the current situation, Malekith would have to deal with the backlash from the 9 great worlds before he had the chance to hear this. Malekith, who realized something, slowly raised his head and looked at the space channel in the sky that connected Svartalfheim and Earth. Then, he swallowed uncontrollably. The originally circular space channel was constantly changing shape, and the ether particles that had entered the sky above London were forcibly expelled by an invisible force. Cracks that looked like glass appeared in the stable space channel. Through these cracks, one could see the black hole that was as deep as ink. Space was compressed, gravity changed, and the power of the 9 great worlds began to forcibly repair the reality that had been modified by the ether particles. As the cause of all this, Malekith felt the endless erosion of energy from all directions. With Malekith as the center, the reality around him began to shatter. The liquid-like ether particles were also rapidly compressed by this powerful and irresistible force. They were directly compressed from an illusory liquid state into a red gem the size of a finger. When the ether particles were forcibly compressed and condensed, Malekith was horrified to find that he had completely lost his connection with the ether particles. The ether particles returned to their original gem form, emitting a red light and floating quietly in front of Malekith. Although it was only a short distance of less than 10 centimeters, Malekith could not even reach out to touch the gem of reality. The extremely terrifying energy wrapped around him tightly like a cocoon, completely restricting all of his movements. As time passed, the cocoon made of energy continued to shrink in size, crazily squeezing Malekith inside. Chaos, fury, destruction, death, energies of various natures were like locusts constantly nibbling away at Malekith's body, making him, who was already in unbearable pain, feel even more extreme pain. At this time, Malekith finally understood why Rog had directly left the plains and why he had allowed him to control the ether particles to connect to Earth. This Earthling had expected this and had deliberately waited for all of this to happen. Malekith felt that he had finally guessed Rog's plan. He laughed wildly with a voice mixed with pain. However, Malekith did not expect that this was not Rog's plan at all. Even Rog himself did not expect that Malekith would choose to use the method of connecting to Earth to solve the problem. According to his plan, Malekith would lose the ability to change reality under the constant pressure of the Shadow Clone. Once most of Malekith's power had been consumed by the Shadow Doppelganger, the main body would appear and use the most proficient instant-killing method to directly end Malekith's life. However, Malekith's godly maneuver had disrupted his plan, making his previous act of collecting information seem redundant. Rog could only hope that Malekith would be able to withstand the backlash of the Nine Realms so that he could make use of the information he had previously collected. The reality modified by Malekith was quickly corrected, and the space channel quickly disappeared under the influence of the Nine Realms. Although the space channel had disappeared, the energy on Malekith's body showed no signs of dissipating at all. And with the passage of time, this energy became more and more abundant. The celestial convergence of the Nine Realms would break the boundaries of each country, which also meant that the power of each country could be transmitted to other countries. Fortunately, it was not the time for the celestial convergence to happen. Otherwise, under the combined suppression of the Nine Realms, Malekith would have been directly crushed into a meat paste or eroded into an atomic state by the energy. But even so, Malekith was now on the verge of death. If this chaotic energy did not dissipate, he would undoubtedly bid farewell to this world. At this moment, a tall figure broke through the surrounding chaotic energy, resisted the erosion of the energy storm, and stepped in front of the immobile Malekith. The person who came was none other than Malekith's strongest subordinate, the Cursed Warrior. At the moment when the strange phenomenon occurred, the Cursed Warrior took advantage of the opportunity to kill Rog's shadow clone and quickly rushed to Malekith's location. But the chaotic and powerful energy storm prevented him from moving forward, so it was not until now that the Cursed Warrior had successfully arrived in front of Malekith. The Cursed Warrior, who could even resist Rog's Odama Rasengan and Thor's lightning, was now covered in blood, and the armor on his body had been eroded by the chaotic energy, completely losing its defensive power. After arriving in front of Malekith with difficulty, the Cursed Warrior silently glanced at the king he had served for thousands of years. Then he stretched out his right hand and grasped the gem of reality floating in front of Malekith. The Cursed Warrior was not Malekith. He had no experience in controlling the gem of reality, nor did he know how to use the power of the gem of reality. But he still had no intention of letting go. No experience, no matter. Not knowing how to use it, no matter. Although the Cursed Warrior could not use the gem of reality like Malekith, he had his own way of using it, a very expensive but very effective method. After holding the gem of reality in his right hand and patting his heart twice, the Cursed Warrior, who was already covered in blood, shone with a magma-like orange-red light. The Dark Elves were immortal. The Cursed Warrior let out the last roar of his life. The moment the roar ended, the Cursed Warrior exploded, and the gem of reality in his right hand shone with a dark red light again. Modify reality. The dark red light flashed, and the chaotic energy eroding Malekith suddenly disappeared, and the energy storm on the entire plane disappeared. The chaotic energy disappeared, the Dark Elves' flagship disappeared, and the Cursed Warrior also disappeared. Malekith knelt on the ground weakly, gasping for breath. The gem of reality floated quietly in the air. The gem of reality had once again modified reality, and the energy backlash brought by the Nine Realms was over. It was over, everything was over. Malekith stood up again and looked at the gem of reality, which was less than a meter away from him. As long as he raised his hand, he could take the gem of reality into his hand at any time. However, he did not reach out his hand, and just stood there silently. Earthling, you win. As soon as Malekith's voice fell, Rog's figure appeared in front of him. Together with Rog, there was a thunder katana completely composed of lightning. Thunder katana slash. This time, the thunder katana slash did not miss, and it did not disappear. It drew a beautiful silver arc and directly slashed across Malekith's neck. At the end of the arc, the katana disappeared, and Malekith's head was separated from his body. Chapter 211. It started with the thunder sword draw and ended with the thunder sword draw. When Malekith's head flew into the air, the outcome of the battle between him and Log was finally decided. Although he defeated Malekith, Rog did not feel the thrill of defeating a strong enemy. The existence of the Gem of Reality made Malekith extremely difficult to deal with. But it was also because of the Gem of Reality that Malekith suffered from the energy backlash of the 9 realms, which eventually led to his defeat and death. Rog removed the thunder tachi in his right hand and turned to hold the floating Gem of Reality. His mood was as calm as water. Not long after, Thor and the other 2 came to Rog's side and looked at Malekith, who had completely lost his life, with a complicated expression. Just as Loki was about to say something, a gorgeous beam of light fell from the sky and landed directly near them. The teleportation beam of Bifrost. In the colorful beam of light, several Asgard warriors in golden armor walked out. His Majesty wants to see you. The Asgard warrior who walked in front said expressionlessly. Let's go. It's time for us to go back. Looking back at Malekith, who had completely lost his life, Thor took Jane and walked into the teleportation beam of Bifrost. Although there were still some loose ends that had not been dealt with, such as the Dark Elves' main ship that was still stuck in the plains. However, since Odin had sent people over, Rog and the others naturally did not need to deal with these loose ends personally. Through the Bifrost, Rog and the others quickly returned to Asgard, and then under the leadership of the palace guards, or rather under escort, they came to the more severely damaged Golden Palace Hall. The attack of the Dark Elves caused serious damage to the Golden Palace Hall, and Rog's crazy driving caused the Golden Palace Hall to suffer the most serious damage since its establishment. I told you you still have a pillar that hasn't been destroyed. When passing by the only remaining stone pillar in the Golden Palace Hall, Loki turned his head and said to Rog. I know. I did it on purpose. Rog ignored Loki's complaints. He was now thinking about a very serious matter. Because of him, Loki did not fake his death as he remembered. This also meant that the scene of Odin being thrown to the New York nursing home by Loki might not happen again, and Odin might not die so quickly. Since Odin would not die so quickly, many things would not happen. For example, the reappearance of the death goddess Hela, the twilight of the gods brought by the flame giant Surtur, and the crazy titan who coveted the space gem for a long time. Just as Rog was seriously thinking about what the future would be like, Odin's slightly tired voice sounded. Log, give me the gem of reality in your hand. Rog didn't say anything and directly opened his right hand that was holding the reality gem. Just as he opened his palm, the reality gem flew towards Odin and landed in Odin's hand. Odin didn't explain anything. A few golden electric currents suddenly appeared in his hand, and the reality gem also shone with a dark red light. The dark red light quickly swept through every corner of the Golden Palace like a wave, and the severely damaged Golden Palace quickly returned to its original appearance. The Golden Palace returned to its original appearance, but Odin didn't stop what he was doing. With a wave of his hand, a cube that looked like a Rubik's Cube appeared in his hand. Then, under the gaze of Rog and the others, Odin put the reality gem into the cube, turning the originally white and flawless cube dark red. I did some sealing on the reality gem to reduce the difficulty and danger of using it, making it easier for you to control or use the power of the reality gem. The principle of the seal is the same as the Rubik's Cube, so if you like, you can call it the reality cube. After saying that, Odin threw the reality cube in his hand to Rog. Rog had just caught the reality cube thrown by Odin when he heard Odin's voice again. From now on, you are the guardian of the reality gem. Although Odin's voice revealed a trace of exhaustion, there was no hint of joking. However, after hearing his words, Rog, Thor, and Loki all showed an incredulous look. Isn't this decision a bit too casual? Among the three, Loki was obviously more excited than Rog and Thor. He even began to imagine how much he could do if he had the reality gem. Conquering Jotunheim, conquering Warnerheim, conquering the land, forget about Earth, conquering that primitive country doesn't make much sense. Thinking of this, Loki couldn't help but turn his head and look at Rog. Unlike Loki, who was already full of crazy ideas, after hearing Odin's words, the first thing that appeared in Rog's mind was not how powerful the reality gem is, but how troublesome the reality gem is. In this universe, there are many madmen who want to get the infinity gem. And among these madmen, there are many madmen with terrifying strength. Without enough strength, not to mention guarding the reality gem, they may not even be able to keep their own life. To put it nicely, the infinity gem is a universal treasure that contains powerful power. To put it bluntly, the infinity gem is a disaster collector, and it's the kind of disaster collector that has super powerful power and can cover the entire universe. After thinking about it seriously, in fact, after thinking for more than 10 seconds, Rog made a decision. He has no interest in being the reality gem guardian. However, he is still a little interested in the name of the reality gem controller. Isn't it just the crazy Titan and some unknown universe-level enemies? Bring it on. After making the decision, he happily put away the reality Rubik's Cube in his hand. After handing over the reality Rubik's Cube to Rog, Odin left the Golden Palace Hall with the Gungnir, and his back looked a little lonely. Under the arrangement of Thor, Loki was locked back in his exclusive cell, and Rog returned to the room he lived in before. As for Jane, she was taken to his palace by Thor. As the future heir to the throne of Asgard, Thor has his own palace in the Golden Palace, which covers a large area and is luxurious enough. In the afternoon of the next day, Thor, who had disappeared for nearly 24 hours, finally appeared in front of Rog again. Malekith is dead, and according to the agreement, I will take you to Nidawyler. But before we set off, I need to explain to you first. There are not many dwarves living in Nidawyler, only about 300 people, and they are somewhat xenophobic and don't like people from other planets. The most important thing is, don't make fun of their height, they will go berserk. Chapter 2:12. Although he had some psychological preparation, when they came to Nidavyl, where the dwarves lived, Rog still had serious doubts about the dwarves. There are more than 300 dwarves living on the Nidavyl star ring. Among these dwarves, as long as they are adult dwarves, they are about twice his height. Even those underage dwarves are generally taller than him by a head. Earthling, do you want to make a suit of armor that suits you? Dwarf King Aitsue sat on a huge chair made entirely of metal and asked with his head down. Yes, I want a suit of armor that doesn't affect my speed and flexibility. The style of the armor can be roughly based on this. After that, Rog took out the sketch that he had drawn last night. Unlike the previous set of armor copied from Uchiha Madara, the armor sketch that Rog took out at this time is more modern. The overall shape of the armor is smoother and more fitting to the body curve. In this regard, Rog decisively borrowed some of the ideas of Tawny Mark series Iron Man armor. However, compared with Tawny's full coverage armor, the armor he designed can only be regarded as half coverage, and there are many fewer parts. In general, there are actually only 3 components. The main body composed of a chest protector, a waist protector, and a skirt, boots for the legs, and bracers for the arms. All the components will not be very thick, similar to the armor worn by Thor now. Although Rog will not wear a cloak like Thor, he intends to wear the Haori of Yondaime Hokage outside the armor. You can continue to improve your drawing skills, but I have a rough idea of what you want. After taking a look at the scroll handed by Rog, Dwarf King Aitsue immediately understood what kind of armor Rog wanted, and the specific building ideas quickly emerged in his mind. There is no problem in helping you build the armor, but you have to solve the materials yourself, do you understand? Understood. For Thor's sake, Dwarf King Ikwi didn't mind helping Rog make a set of armor. It wouldn't take much time anyway. But as for the materials, Rog could only solve it himself. Although Asgard had sent a lot of materials, they were all used for a specific purpose. Dwarf King Aitsue would not use Asgard's materials for Rog. As for the materials, I can only provide vibranium and URU metal. As for the others, if you need them, I can get them as soon as possible. Rog was not dissatisfied with Dwarf King Aitsue's request. It was already good enough that the other party was willing to forge the armor for him. He couldn't expect the other party to pay for the materials. For the time being, he couldn't bring himself to do such a thing. Under the gaze of Ai Chui and Thor, Rog took out a psychic scroll that he carried with him and channeled some of the vibranium and URU metal that he had collected before. Thank you Wakanda, thank you Asgard. When Rog channeled a pile of vibranium and URU metal, Dwarf King Aitsue's eyes were a little strange. Is this guy Odin's illegitimate son? Where did he get so much URU metal? Just the URU metal that Rog channeled now was more than the total amount in Nidawyler's warehouse. And Aitsue was sure that Rog had more URU metal than this. The URU metal that Rog channeled now was only about 1/3 of what he had. When Aseri's army was fighting in Warnerheim, most of the URU metal sent by Asgard went into his pocket. Now, it was time for these URU metal to play a role. The number is a bit wrong. A set of armor can't use so much URU metal and vibranium. With a casual glance, it could be seen that the amount that Rog channeled greatly exceeded the need for a set of armor. Yes, if the number of armor is calculated, here is about the amount of 10 sets of armor. As soon as Rog finished speaking, Dwarf King Aitsue's face became a little gloomy. Another greedy guy. The agreement was only 1 set, but he wants 10 sets. Earthling, your appetite is too big. After hearing Rog's words, Thor's face gradually became ugly. Asking Dwarf King Aitsue to personally create a set of armor, even for him, was not an easy task. The reason why Aitsue agreed to his request so easily was mostly because of Odin's face. Here are the materials needed for 10 sets of armor. Except for the original set, I am willing to give 5 sets of the remaining 9 sets of materials to Nidavel. As for the remaining 4 sets of materials, I hope King Aitsue can help me make a revolver. After that, Rog took out his other weapon design sketch. The style of the revolver on the sketch was very similar to the classic Colt Python, but it was larger and had not 1 barrel, but 2. This kind of weapon used by ordinary people doesn't use URU metal and vibranium at all. Tell me, what do you want? It was a revolver, and a gunpowder revolver at that. Let alone in Nidavel, even on Earth, this kind of thing is not considered a high-end weapon. I have no interest in gunpowder weapons, but I am still a little interested in firearms. I hope that this revolver can use the chakra on my body as the energy source and have the ability to fire ninjutsu bullets. Rog quickly explained to Aitsue what chakra and ninjutsu bullets are. Ninjutsu bullets, this is his own original term. To put it simply, some ninjutsu are prepared in advance and condensed into the shape of bullets, waiting for the needed time to fire it. This is purely a boring research he did before. But after seeing the Dwarf King Aitsue, he suddenly had the intention to make this research into a finished product. It's not difficult to extract the chakra on your body as energy and then fire it in the form of bullets. But firing ninjutsu bullets, I can only conclude this after seeing your so-called ninjutsu bullets. Aitsue originally labeled Rog as greedy, but after hearing about chakra and ninjutsu bullets, he became interested in Rog again. I made a few bullets before, you can take a look. This is a Rasengan bullet, this is a Grand Flame Annihilation bullet, this is a Chidori bullet. Not all ninjutsu can be made into ninjutsu bullets, after all, this is just a small research he did on a whim before. After hitting the target, the ninjutsu in the bullet will be automatically released, you can experience it. Under Rog's signal, Aitsue threw the Rasengan bullet that was too small for him. The Rasengan bullet hit an iron pillar more than 10 meters away. At the moment when the bullet burst, a light blue Rasengan appeared at the position where the bullet hit, madly twisting and hitting the huge iron pillar. Chapter 213. Boom! The iron pillar, which was as thick as Rog's body, showed a terrible curve under the constant impact of Rasengan, and then collapsed. Interesting. Looking at the remaining 2 ninjutsu bullets in his hand, Dwarf King Aitsue showed a curious look. Whether it was the chakra that Rog just said or the ninjutsu bullets, they were all things that he had never seen before. After a few seconds of silence, Aitsue threw the Grand Fire Annihilation bullet and Chidori bullet to the left and right sides respectively. The Sea of Fire and Lightning appeared at the same time. On one side was the damage caused by the amazing high temperature, and on the other side was the single damage caused by the terrifying electric current. When the flames and lightning dissipated, Dwarf King Aitsue said again, "I can help you build the revolver you want. If you have any other requests, you may as well say them all together. If possible, I hope you can enchant the revolver so that it can respond to the master's call like Thor's hammer. Rog will not use this revolver as his main weapon, so he does not have many requirements for the revolver's enchantment effect." No problem. Although enchantment of weapons will increase the difficulty of manufacturing, it is not difficult for Dwarf King Aitsue. After getting an affirmative reply from Aitsue, Rog finally breathed a sigh of relief. Although he gave enough reward, but for an existence like Aitsue, the materials he gave may not be able to move Aitsue. As the Dwarf King, Aitsue has seen all kinds of scenes. Not to mention vibranium and URU metal, he has seen a lot of other rarer and more precious metals. What really moved him was not the materials given by Rog, but the ninjutsu bullets. This kind of ninjutsu bullet, which has never appeared before, is a good new weapon idea for Aitsue. After Rog and Aitsue reached a cooperation, Thor left Nidavellir and returned to Asgard alone. As for Rog, he was left by Aitsue to participate in the manufacturing of armor and revolver. Rog had no opinion about Aitsue's arrangement, and he was even a little happy and excited. Nidavellir, this was an existence with an extremely high reputation in the entire universe. As long as it was a weapon or equipment from Nidavellir, it could be sold for an unimaginably high price on any planet. The products of the dwarves must be the best. However, what Rog didn't expect was that he would stay in Nidavellir for more than 3 months. In the past 3 months, Aitsue had been repeating the process of forging pistols, melting them, forging them again, and melting them again. In Aitsue's own words, the pistol was still lacking. In order to cooperate with Aitsue's OCD, Rog also constantly developed various types of ninjutsu bullets and provided them to Aitsue for a series of tests. After Aitsue broke the mold for the nth time, Rog finally got the revolver that he wanted. This revolver, named Calamity by Atri, was a little bigger than an ordinary revolver and was silver-white in color. The whole gun was about 30 centimeters long and had a capacity of 6 bullets. The 2 barrels arranged side by side can fire 2 bullets at a time. There were 3 firing modes. The first was ordinary shooting, which directly extracted chakra as bullets. It didn't need to be loaded. The power was average, and the firing speed was fast. The second was ninjutsu shooting. As the name suggests, it fired the ninjutsu bullets in the magazine to kill the enemy with ninjutsu effect. The third was fatal shooting. It was similar to ordinary shooting, but it required more chakra. The chakra bullets fired were more powerful. For enemies who didn't specialize in defense, it could be fatal. URU metal could be perfectly fused with chakra, and vibranium also made the pistol super strong. The enchantment effect responded to the summon, allowing him to summon the calamity at any time. After a few test shots, Rog became more and more satisfied with the calamity pistol. It was worthy of being a weapon made by Dwarf King Atri. It was perfect. After putting on the armor that Atri had already made, and hanging the Kusanagi sword in Calamity on the left and right sides of his belt, Rog left Nidawyler, where he had lived for more than 3 months, and returned to Asgard through Bifrost. Because of his participation in Thor's escape plan, Heimdall was relieved of his position as the guardian of Bifrost by Odin. It wasn't until a month ago that Heimdall regained his original position and became Asgard's first line of defense. Do you want to return to Earth directly now? Heimdall, who was standing on the console, asked. I'll go back later. I'll say hello to Thor first. After saying goodbye to Heimdall, Rog directly used ninjutsu and flew in the direction of Golden Palace. Earth release, super light heavy rock technique. In more than 3 months in Nidawyler, in addition to cooperating with Atri to create Calamity, Rog did most of the research and development of ninjutsu bullets in exchange for new ninjutsu. Thor's commission provided him with up to 250 ninja coins as commission reward, plus the 335 ninja coins he originally had. The number of his unconsumed ninja coins reached an amazing 585 ninja coins. However, this amazing number didn't last long, and more than half of it was consumed by him. Super light heavy rock technique was one of the ninjutsu he exchanged during the development of ninjutsu bullets. In addition to this ninjutsu that can greatly reduce the mass of matter and has allowed him to fly, he also exchanged more than a dozen ninjutsu including Fire Release, Great Fireball, Fire Release, Fire Dragon Bullet, Water Release, Water Shockwave, Water Release, Water Dragon Bullet, Water Release, Whirlpool Water Blade, Wind Release, Vacuum Ripple, Wind Release, Tornado Hurricane, and so on. This series of ninjutsu exchanges also reduced his unconsumed ninja coins directly to 255. Although the consumption of ninja coins was a bit high, the harvest was obvious. After further improving his ninjutsu list, he always had the intention to find an enemy to practice his ninjutsu. However, this wish of his could only be realized after he returned to Earth. After using super light heavy rock technique to quickly fly to Golden Palace, Rog found Thor, who he hadn't seen for more than 3 months. When Rog saw Thor again, Thor was dealing with piles of documents that were tens of centimeters high in the council hall in Golden Palace. Jane only stayed in Asgard for less than a week before returning to Earth. Thor planned to go to Earth with Jane, but Odin gave him a new task, a long and boring task. Odin no longer dealt with the specific government affairs of Asgard at this time. Everything was handed over to Thor. I'm going back to Earth. If you need any help in the future, you can contact me through Shadow Clone Technique. After that, Rog took out a Shadow Clone Technique scroll and handed it to Thor. After you go back, help take care of Jane. Her research may attract some malicious eyes. No problem. Chapter 214. Thor told Jane the astronomical knowledge that did not belong to the Earth, so Jane is now one of the top astronomers on the Earth, and she is also the kind of astronomer who has a certain understanding of alien civilizations. Although the Earth has not yet reached the level of an interstellar civilization, there are many people interested in the Sea of Stars. There are some fanatics among them. I will pay more attention to life safety, but if it is emotional and spiritual, I can't guarantee it. After a few seconds of silence, Rog suddenly said. As soon as he finished speaking, Thor, who was writing rapidly, stopped and looked at him with a frown. A few meters away, Thor's hammer became restless. I'm leaving first. If you have time, come to the Earth more often. Without waiting for Thor's reply, Rog directly used lightning body flicker and left the meeting room, leaving a few weak light blue electric currents. After leaving the meeting room, he didn't look for anyone else and flew straight to the Bifrost Hall. After saying goodbye to Heimdall, Rog walked into the transmission channel that exuded a brilliant light and returned to the Earth that he had been away from for a long time. He doesn't know if Heimdall did it deliberately or not, but the exit of Bifrost was set in a place that was completely beyond Rog's expectations. Times Square, Manhattan, New York City. When Roger walked out of the dazzling teleportation beam, he saw a dense crowd of people, as well as the surrounding people who were holding up their phones. At this moment, he finally understood why Heimdall asked him if he needed to be teleported to a specific place. Heimdall, I will remember you. After a helpless sigh, he locked onto a nearby flying Thor technique and instantly disappeared from people's sight and mobile phone cameras. After leaving Times Square, he began to sense the flying Thor technique in the office. He has been away for several months, and he doesn't know how Konoha is doing now. With a thought, the scene in front of him changed again, and the familiar office reappeared in front of his eyes. However, as soon as he returned to the office, he immediately noticed that something was wrong. The office has not changed, and it is as neat as ever. But the problem is that the number of lives in the company seems to be too many. Even without using Chakra's sensing ability, he could clearly sense that there were dozens of humans outside the office. After opening the office door, he saw a group of men and women in suits busily working. Although they were all dressed up as professionals, he could tell at a glance that they were all special people who had received professional training. Soldiers, agents, spies, or maybe there were some professionals whose profession he couldn't name. Can anyone tell me what's going on here? Although Rog's voice wasn't loud, the moment he opened the office door, everyone's eyes involuntarily gathered on him. Mr. Rog, you're finally back. I'm your new assistant, Alice. A curvy blonde woman who looked more like a mistress than an agent quickly came to his side and said softly. Where are Sky and Erica? His tone was very calm, but his mood was starting to get a little bad. He had only been away for more than 3 months, and the company had become like this, which made him very unhappy. They moved to the headquarters base in Washington, and I'm temporarily in charge here. The blonde girl named Alice continued to answer in a gentle tone. Coupled with her charming smile, she gave people a feeling of being bathed in the spring breeze. No one can refuse my charm. Sure enough, I'm the most suitable person for this task. A few thoughts flashed through Alice's mind quickly, and her face still maintained the charming smile. However, Alice didn't expect that just as she silently waited for Rog's answer, Rog directly took out the pistol at his waist and pointed it at her forehead. I don't care who you are, now, immediately, use your phone to contact your boss, you have 5 seconds. From beginning to end, Rog didn't turn his head to look at Alice. Rog's sudden action of taking out his gun not only completely exceeded Alice's expectations, but also completely exceeded everyone's expectations. No one thought that Rog, who had disappeared for 3 months, would suddenly come back, and this was the scene as soon as he came back. 5, 4, 3, Rog didn't pay attention to anyone, and he had no intention of explaining at all, just silently counting down. He didn't dare to shoot. He was a member of Thunder Agents, and he absolutely didn't dare to shoot. Most people, including Alice, didn't think that Rog would shoot. In their view, this was just a way for Rog to show his strength. However, in addition to these people, there were a small number of people who were eager for Rog to shoot at this time, and they even secretly took out small camera equipment and pointed the camera at him. I'm from S.H.I.E.L.D. This is a cooperation between S.H.I.E.L.D. and Secretary of State Ross. If you need, I can help you contact S.H.I.E.L.D. or Secretary of State Ross. Even though a gun was pointed at her forehead, Alice didn't panic at all. She opened her mouth to explain. 2, 1. The 5-second countdown ended, and there was no gunshot. Sure enough, he didn't dare to shoot, he was just bluffing. Alice was not surprised by this result, or rather, she had already guessed this result. Do you think that as long as you bring out S.H.I.E.L.D. or Ross, I won't dare to shoot? Only then did Rog finally turn his head to look at Alice, and his tone was as calm as ever. At this time, he didn't exude any killing intent, and there was no sense of oppression in his tone. But for some reason, a dangerous reminder suddenly emerged in Alice's heart. Anyway, you are the captain of Thunder Agents. You should still abide by Secretary of State Ross's decision. Although she didn't know why there was a sense of danger in her heart, Alice still maintained her previous posture and said unhurriedly. Really? After hearing Alice's answer, Rog suddenly laughed. Interesting, really interesting. Ha 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 ha. Hey, those who are secretly taking pictures, hold your hands steady. Don't you want to see this picture? I'll show it to you. As soon as his voice fell, a fierce gunshot suddenly sounded. Boom! Alice, who was hit in the head by Calamity, flew out directly. Her head was shattered into several pieces by the chakra bullet, and bright red blood splashed everywhere. Until Alice's body fell to the ground, the agents and spies who witnessed this scene still couldn't believe what they saw. Rog actually shot. And he did it without any hesitation after knowing that S.H.I.E.L.D. was cooperating with Secretary of State Ross. The huge company suddenly became dead silent, and the TV in the hall just broadcast the latest news at this time. According to the latest news from this station, the fourth Hokage Rog, who died 3 months ago while performing a secret mission, suddenly appeared in Times Square. A large number of pedestrians at the scene witnessed the scene of the fourth Hokage walking out of the mysterious beam of light. Died while performing a mission? Glancing at the picture in the news, Rog seemed to have guessed something. Chapter 2:15. Why do people always like to do things to me? Do they think I'm weak and easy to bully? At the beginning, Rog didn't know what was going on. But as long as he combines what Alice said with the content of the news, it's not difficult to guess the result. It seems that someone wants to take advantage of his absence from the earth to make some big news. After killing Alice, he didn't pay attention to anyone in the hall. He directly used the Flying Thunder God and returned home. There are no traces of invasion. It seems that this place should not be controlled by S.H.I.E.L.D. and Ross's people. After carefully inspecting the few secret decorations in the house, he took out the work phone that Sky had specially modified from the study. This is the mobile phone he uses to contact the Thunder agents, and it has Ross's contact information. First, he took the phone to charge, then he turned on the computer and began to think about the news reports related to the fourth Hokage. It would have been better if he hadn't searched. After searching, he found out that not only had he died in the course of a mission 3 months ago, but he had also held a very high standard funeral 2 months ago. This is a bit too much. The latest news he found was the news of him wearing armor and appearing from the teleportation beam of the Rainbow Bridge. Later, he searched for news related to Konoha's private military company and Spider-Woman. Spider-Woman is still active on the streets of New York, maintaining New York's security and justice. There is not much news about Konoha's company. In summary, there are basically 2 things. The first thing is that Konoha has become a cooperative agency between S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Ministry of Defense and has received an official endorsement. This may also explain why there are a lot of people he doesn't know in his company. The second thing is that Konoha has moved to Washington and set up a headquarters in Washington. And coincidentally, Konoha's new headquarters is less than 1 kilometer away from the Thunder Agent's headquarters. After reading the news found on the internet, Rog not only didn't understand what Ross and S.H.I.E.L.D. wanted to do, but he became even more confused. What do they want to do? Publicize his death, and then take over his men and company? Where did they get the courage to carry out this straightforward plan that is close to retarded? As long as he comes back, everything they do can't be hidden from everyone. Unless they are sure that he will not appear again. But then there would be an even more inexplicable reason. Why did they think that he would definitely not appear? And judging from the reaction of Alice and the others, although they were a little surprised by his reappearance, they were definitely not surprised to see him come back to life. No one knew that he would leave Earth, and even Gavin only knew that he would be out for a while. Furthermore, when he left Earth, he was sent to Asgard through the Shikatsu forest. S.H.I.E.L.D.'s people are not idiots, and Ross is certainly not an idiot. If they dare to do this, they must have sufficient confidence. Rog began to organize the information he knew. First of all, the news of his death was spread by the Thunder Secret Service. This meant that Ross was definitely involved. Then, his funeral was held jointly by Thunderbolt agents and S.H.I.E.L.D. because he saw people from both sides in the funeral photos. In the end, Konoha's new headquarters was relocated to the vicinity of Thunder agents, and in the original company, most of the people were from S.H.I.E.L.D. What does this count as? When I'm really dead, they're going to divide my assets? Thinking of this, he suddenly had the urge to log into his bank account to check the balance of his account. Boom! However, instead of logging in on the computer, he took out the bank card directly from the drawer and handed it to the shadow clone. If he logs in here, maybe he will be investigated by S.H.I.E.L.D. While waiting for his phone to charge and the shadow clone to check the balance of his account, he was not idle. He directly left the study with the flying thunder god and teleported to a forest on the outskirts. Summoning technique. This time, instead of using psychic weapons and equipment, he chose to use Psychic Punisher. A series of complex summoning techniques appeared on the ground in an instant, and then a cloud of smoke exploded out of thin air. When the smoke dissipated, he saw one of his most reliable men, Punisher. However, the current Punisher was completely different from the Punisher he imagined. The Punisher was tightly bound inside a cylindrical device. Except for the head, which could still move freely, the body below the neck was bound in the device. On the surface of this cylindrical device, there were several broken circuit interfaces, which seemed to have been forcibly torn off during the summoning. Wait a minute, I'll summon Bronsky. Without any hesitation, he performed the spirit communication technique again and saw an even bigger cylinder. Abomination Bronsky was also like Punisher, only his head could move freely, and what was worse than Punisher was that even his mouth was sealed by a metal mask. It was really thorough. Before he had time to release Punisher and Abomination, the Shadow Clone, who had just gone to check the balance of the account, came to his side and returned the bank card to him with a wry smile. The Shadow Clone didn't speak and lifted the effect by himself, and the relevant memory was fed back to the original body. Account balance 0. 23 yuan. After receiving this information, Rog was really angry. If he remembered correctly, when he left the Earth, he had about $1.8 billion in his account, including the $500 million that Ross had just handed over. For S.H.I.E.L.D. or the military, $1.8 billion may not be a big deal. However, to Roger, this was the hard-earned money that he had painstakingly saved up after transmigrating to this world. Before leaving the Earth, he was still a veritable billionaire, and the kind of billionaire with a liquid capital of $1 billion. After returning, he had become a pauper with less than $1 in the bank. This was no longer a matter of hundreds of millions of $, this was S.H.I.E.L.D. and Ross trying to kill him. Now he didn't want to know why S.H.I.E.L.D. and Ross were doing this. The only thing he wanted to do now was to use his own strength to get back his hard-earned money and make those bold guys pay a painful price. Dang 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 dang. Pulling out the Kusanagi sword hanging on the left side of his belt, Rog used Chidori blade to directly cut through the devices on Punisher and Abomination, and then said word by word, "Haven't you always wanted to go on a mission with me? I'm going to S.H.I.E.L.D.'s Triple Wing headquarters and Thunder Task Force headquarters now, do you dare to come with me?" Chapter 216. In this short 1 or 2 minutes, Rog quickly recalled all the things he had done since he crossed over. Although he never thought of himself as a good person or a superhero. But he has always stuck to his bottom line, knowing what can be done and what can't be done. However, he now found that his concession and kindness, in the eyes of others, is weakness and timidity. Good people are bullied, good horses are ridden. At this point, he doesn't want to worry about what S.H.I.E.L.D. and Ross are up to. Whether it's justice or evil, it doesn't matter. He intends to use his fists to tell others what it means to not mess with him. After coming out of the restraint device, Punisher and Abomination moved their hands and feet tacitly. They didn't tell Rog what they had experienced in the past few months because they firmly believed that Rog would use practical actions to help them get justice. Are you ready? Although the anger in his heart has been burning, Rog's brain has never been so calm. I can't wait to tear them apart. Abomination clenched his fists and his body exuded a magma-like light. Punisher didn't say anything, but his body exuded an amazing killing intent, looking like a messenger of death. Then let's go. He once inserted an ordinary flying thunder god kunai into the headquarters of the Thunderbolt Secret Service team. Although this flying thunder god kunai was no longer in the headquarters of the Thunderbolt Secret Service team, this did not affect his plan at all. As long as he can teleport to Washington, as for whether S.H.I.E.L.D. and Ross will use the flying Thor kunai to set a trap, he doesn't care at all. So what if there is a trap? I will crush you all the same. In the next second, the figures of Rog and the other two disappeared into the forest. Konoha Trio's killing journey has officially begun. There was no accident during the teleportation process, and the forest scene in front of them was instantly replaced by a wide square the size of 10 football fields. In this spacious and somewhat amazing square, Roger and the other two saw fully armed S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, UA soldiers, all members of the Thunder Secret Service, all kinds of weapons of war enough to start a local war, and 3 new generation helicarriers floating quietly in the air. Is this the source of your confidence? Obviously, S.H.I.E.L.D. and Thunder agents have been prepared for a long time. Otherwise, it would have taken a long time just to gather so many people here. Other than the 5 members of the Thunderbolt Secret Service team, Rog only recognized one person in the crowd. Sky. From the looks of it, Sky wasn't missing an arm or a leg. However, her mental state was not very good. She looked lifeless. Sky was here, but Erica wasn't. Rog could guess what had happened to Erica. Who's in charge here? After picking up the flying Thor kunai that was deliberately inserted in the center of the square, Rog took a few steps forward and said in a calm tone. Logically speaking, it was impossible for his voice to travel more than a few hundred meters. But through chakra, he created a natural loudspeaker that allowed his voice to reach everyone's ears. Rog, you are suspected of endangering the security of the Earth, stealing S.H.I.E.L.D. secrets, and slaughtering a large number of innocent people. The World Security Council has decided to sentence you to death. Surrender now, you have no chance. Someone on the other side shouted with a loudspeaker, portraying their actions as a righteous act to maintain world peace. Fucking hypocrites, don't you just want the power in my body, don't you just want to master the so-called ninjutsu? Come on, bring it on. Let me see if you're worthy of this power. After that, Rog slowly raised his left hand and gave them a middle finger. Trash. Then, he added another sentence. With the help of chakra, the word trash was conveyed to everyone on the other side. After doing all this, he turned directly and walked towards the Punisher and Abomination, ignoring the snipers who had already aimed at him. There is only one mission goal, and that is to kill all of them, understand? Understood. Understood. Looking at the Punisher and Abomination's determined expressions without the slightest hesitation, Rog suddenly felt a sense of relief. These two subordinates were not bad. At this moment, the snipers who had already aimed at the 3 of them finally pulled the trigger. Dozens of sniper bullets flew towards them at a speed faster than the speed of sound. Then, when they were more than 10 meters away from the 3 of them, they instantly disintegrated. Raiton, Thundercloak Protection. The moment he turned around, Rog had already cast a large-range Thundercloak Protection, completely enveloping the 3 of them. It was not until the sniper bullets were completely disintegrated that the sound of gunshots finally reached their ears. The snipers' shots also officially announced the beginning of the battle. Bang 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 bang. Da 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 da. Various gunshots continued to ring out, and Rog finally began his counterattack. Mokuton, Tree Realm Descent. Before the swarm of bullets and shells flew in front of them, they were blocked by trees and vines. A dense forest emerged directly from the ground, turning the specially built battlefield of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Thunder agents into Rog's home field. Kill. As soon as his voice fell, Rog disappeared in front of the Punisher and Abomination. He didn't need to give any specific instructions to the Punisher and Abomination because they were the top fighters. He also didn't need to prepare any weapons for them because their bodies were the most powerful weapons. Rog had never used Tree Realm Descent on Earth, so neither Shield nor Thunder agents knew that he had the power to instantly change the battlefield terrain. In this lush forest that was completely beyond imagination, the threat of bullets and shells and other gunpowder weapons plummeted. In this forest with trees and vines everywhere, there was no good shooting environment at all. What's worse is that the trees, vines, weeds, and other plants here were all under Rog's control. With just the arrival of the tree world, he completely destroyed the battlefield that Shield and Thunder Secret Service had carefully built. However, at this time, he didn't pay attention to the ground troops. The small fries on the ground weren't worth his energy. At this time, he was standing on a thick trunk, casually loading ninjutsu bullets into Calamity. Spiral electromagnetic gun bullets, spiral electromagnetic gun bullets, spiral electromagnetic gun bullets. After loading all 6 spiral electromagnetic gun bullets into the magazine, he looked up at the 3 helicarriers floating in the sky. Since you trust the technological power in your hands so much, have a taste of the dwarf and ninja's technology. He pointed Calamity's muzzle at one of the helicarriers and pulled the trigger. Rumble. 2 silver-white beams of light as thick as an arm emerged from the barrel of Calamity, carrying the power of Calamity that could destroy everything, and went straight to the target. Chapter 217. The new generation of helicarrier in the sky is a super war fortress built by Shield after the Battle of New York. Each helicarrier is equipped with a variety of weapons carefully developed by Shield. The ultra-long-range precision gun formation at the bow of the ship can eliminate 1,000 terrorists in a minute. Combined with the long-range, medium-range, and short-range missiles on the helicarrier and the close-range defense guns located around the hull, these 3 helicarriers have the terrifying strength to attack a country. However, in front of Rog, who is holding the catastrophe pistol, these 3 helicarriers are 3 huge targets. Boom! Almost the next second after the trigger was pulled, the 2 spiral electromagnetic pulse cannons had already reached the bottom of the helicarrier, and 2 terrifying explosions sounded like nuclear bombs. 2 light blue balls of light hung high in the sky like the sun, and the violent silver-white electric snakes raged wildly around everything. The helicarrier shattered. No one thought that Rog's first target would be the helicarrier. What was even more unexpected was that the helicarrier, which Shield had placed high hopes on, would be so vulnerable in front of Rog. The helicarrier that was hit by the 2 spiral electromagnetic pulse cannons had completely lost its original appearance at this time, and it turned into pieces of wreckage of various sizes, falling from the sky like a burning meteor shower. Until now, people who witnessed this scene still couldn't believe what they saw in front of them. Especially the 3 people sitting on the top floor of Shield's headquarters, Sanku Wing Building, their faces were even more incredulous. World Security Council Minister Alexander Pierce, Shield Director Nick Fury, and Secretary of State Thaddeus Ross. The 3 people representing different forces looked at the picture on the screen without saying a word. This mission against Rog came from the hands of the 3 of them. But they never thought that Rog, who had disappeared for 3 months, would show such fierce resistance when he reappeared. Before the operation, they used a psychological analysis team of hundreds of people to analyze all of Rog's actions after he came to New York. In the end, they came to the conclusion that Rog may resist, but in the end, he will choose to compromise. With a sufficiently reliable psychological analysis report, coupled with the strength of Shield's 3 helicarriers and the Thunder Task Force, they unanimously agreed to the plan called Conquer Naruto. Whether it was Shield or the military, they didn't want such a super force to exist in the United States that was not under their control. If they couldn't firmly control this super force in their hands, they would rather destroy this uncontrollable super force with their own hands. If they don't obey, then die. As the strongest military organization in the most powerful country on Earth, they had such confidence. However, after witnessing ROG destroy a helicarrier with their own eyes, their confidence began to waver. During the Battle of New York, S.H.I.E.L.D. already knew that Roger had the ability to launch a long-range energy beam. After all, he used this move to directly kill 2 Leviathan behemoths at that time. They had evaluated the power of this move and made the corresponding preparations. However, it turned out that their evaluation and their preparations were just what they thought. ROG certainly knew that S.H.I.E.L.D. had seen the helicarrier move, but he still chose to use this move against the helicarrier. This was for nothing else but to tell S.H.I.E.L.D. that they shouldn't use their outdated and insignificant vision to infer his true strength. The sleeping dragon has awakened. Roth didn't look at Nick Fury and Alexander Pierce beside him as he muttered to himself. When ROG shot down the first helicarrier, the remaining 2 helicarriers didn't stop at all and began to rise rapidly. With the example of the first helicarrier, even if the commanders of the remaining 2 helicarriers were idiots, they could see that the current height didn't provide enough reaction time at all. No matter how strong the defense of the helicarrier's close-range artillery and other defensive equipment was, it still took time to lock on and react. ROG's helicarrier broke through all the defense systems of the helicarrier and hit the target directly. The helicarrier, which symbolized the pinnacle of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s technological weapons, was destroyed so quickly and completely. The helicarrier destroyed not only the helicarrier, but also S.H.I.E.L.D.'s confidence and dignity. The burning wreckage of the helicarrier had not yet landed, but the mood of the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents who witnessed this scene had already fallen to the bottom of the valley. Is this power really something that humans can resist? The remaining 2 helicarriers took off at top speed, and at this time, it looked more like an incompetent dodge and a shameful retreat. Looking at the rapid rise of the 2 helicarriers, ROG didn't immediately launch a second attack. Instead, he came to the top of the canopy, stepping on the leaves and laughing wildly. Ha 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 ha, this is the so-called S.H.I.E.L.D., this is the helicarrier you are so proud of. Ha 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 ha, you want to leave just like that? Aren't you looking down on me too much? The chakra in his body surged wildly, and ROG once again launched a ninjutsu that was amazing enough in momentum and power. King Kong Blockade. With a silent chant in his heart, dozens of shining golden chakra chains rushed out of his back. The chakra chains that had just emerged were only 2 fingers thick. But as these chains flew towards the helicarriers in the sky like bullets, the size of the chains grew larger and larger. 3 centimeters, 10 centimeters, 50 centimeters, 1 meter, 3 meters, the 2 helicarriers rose to a height of thousands of meters in just over 10 seconds. But the chakra chains climbed faster than them. ROG didn't care about the chakra consumption at all. These chakra chains showed a terrifying speed beyond the speed of sound, and it took only 2 or 3 seconds to reach the bottom of one of the helicarriers. Close-range artillery, rapid-fire artillery, ground-to-ground missiles, high-speed machine guns, and other weapons madly spat fire, and hundreds of bullets and shells madly attacked the chakra chains. This airtight crossfire defensive rain of bullets was enough to destroy any target flying towards the helicarrier. But in front of the chakra chains that seemed to come from another dimension, these bullets and missiles couldn't even slow down the chakra chains. Bang 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 bang, dozens of chakra chains more than 3 meters wide penetrated the helicarrier's hull like a sword, and under the watchful eyes of the helicarrier combatants and all onlookers, the helicarrier was firmly entangled. The pale golden chakra chains instantly tightened, and the helicarrier that was entangled like a crab was forcibly stopped. The anti-gravity engines around the hull emitted an orange-red light that exceeded the operating load. Come down. Chapter 218. ROG screamed and the chakra chains that emerged from his back began to shrink at a speed visible to the naked eye. After the Battle of New York, the existence of extraordinary humans in the world can be regarded as basically known to everyone. But even so, the people present couldn't believe what they were seeing. The helicarrier, which was more than 300 meters long, was actually pulled to the ground by a human. What's even more unbelievable is that this human is actually standing on a leaf. This scene completely exceeded scientific common sense, and the forest that had been filled with gunfire suddenly quieted down. Pairs of eyes looked up at the sky as if they had seen a miracle. This is 2F** King crazy. Before the battle, SHIELD agents and military soldiers knew that the target they were going to deal with this time was Roger, who was known as the Fourth Hokage. They knew that Rog had extraordinary powers that ordinary people did not have, and they also knew that Rog had strength far beyond ordinary people. They had seen the battle between Rog and the Chidori during the Battle of New York, and they had also seen various analysis reports about Rog's abilities. But no matter what video data or document records, they couldn't accept the scene in front of them. Being able to lift a car weighing several tons with their bare hands is already the so-called Superman in people's minds. What Rog was doing now was pulling a helicarrier weighing tens of thousands of tons to the ground. This feeling, in the eyes of these soldiers and agents, who were mostly ordinary people, was no different from seeing someone lift the Statue of Liberty or the Empire State Building with their bare hands. No, this was more exaggerated and shocking than lifting the Statue of Liberty or the Empire State Building. Shoot, shoot. I don't care what method you use, kill Rog for me. Aim all cannons at Rog below, quick. Quick. The other party is just a target now, fire, fire, and completely bomb that area for me. The commander of the ground forces and the commander of the helicarrier issued orders to fire at Rog almost at the same time. In particular, the helicarrier, which was tightly bound by chakra chains, immediately fired various types of missiles and bullets at Rog. As the initiator of all this, Rog was certainly prepared to be attacked by the other party at any time. Chakra coat. Lightning cloak protection. Wood human jutsu. In just a moment, he built an indestructible defense. Dozens of meters tall wood Arhat appeared behind him, and his huge hands protected him on both sides. The moment wood Arhat appeared, the chakra coat shone with a light blue light completely enveloped him, further enhancing wood Arhat's already terrifying defense. In addition, around the wooden Arhat's body, there was a layer of lightning armor that was invisible to the naked eye. No matter which direction the attack came from, no matter what the weapon was. As long as they couldn't penetrate the lightning cloak protection, wood Arhat, and chakra coat in a short period of time, they wouldn't be able to hurt Rog in the innermost part. Intense explosions continued to sound, and orange-red flames appeared as if they didn't cost money. Powerful shockwaves and shockwaves ravaged everything around them, regardless of friend or foe. However, none of this had any meaning. No matter if it was an attack from the ground forces or the helicarrier, none of the attacks could get within 10 meters of Rog. Chakra chains continued to retract, and the helicarrier continued to emit sounds as if it couldn't bear the burden. The steel hull was forcibly distorted by the powerful force, and the power of the 4 anti-gravity engines was pushed to the limit, and the light emitted by the engines became redder and redder. Although the power was pushed to the limit, the helicarrier still showed no signs of climbing. The huge hull was pulled closer and closer to the ground by chakra chains. Boom! After holding on for a while, one of the anti-gravity engines took the lead in collapsing. With the explosion of the anti-gravity engine, the power of the helicarrier was reduced by a quarter in an instant, and the speed of its descent was getting faster and faster. Boom! Within a few seconds, the second anti-gravity engine also ushered in the end of the overload explosion. When the first anti-gravity engine exploded, SHIELD's agents already had a bad premonition. However, their worry didn't last long before it completely turned into despair. 4 anti-gravity engines can provide perfect flight power. Although 3 engines will reduce stability, it can still maintain the flight posture. However, once the number of engines drops to 2, it means that the helicarrier will completely lose its flight power. After the helicarrier lost 2 engines, even if Rog did nothing, the helicarrier would crash under the influence of gravity. So, when the second anti-gravity engine also collapsed, the helicarrier was doomed to crash. It's over, it's completely over. The helicarrier that S.H.I.E.L.D. spent a lot of money to build has been destroyed before it could really show its power. And now it's been less than 5 minutes since the start of the battle. Nick Fury and Alexander Pierce on the top floor of Sanku Wing's headquarters building also personally demonstrated what it means to be ashen-faced. The battle prowess that Logue had just displayed had far exceeded their expectations. Whether it's the spiral electromagnetic gun that destroyed the first helicarrier, or the King Kong blockade that is now about to cause the second helicarrier to crash, they are not new tricks. Before making the plan, S.H.I.E.L.D. had studied these two skills in great detail and made corresponding countermeasures. They couldn't understand how the spiral electromagnetic gun, which could only kill a cyborg like the Leviathan, could destroy the helicarrier in one shot. They also couldn't understand why the King Kong blockade, which could only deal with ordinary people before, could now destroy the helicarrier. But now is obviously not the time to consider these issues. What they need to consider most now is how to stop Rogue, a ninja who has shown enough power to fight against the entire S.H.I.E.L.D. and the military alone. I'm going to contact someone, I'll be back in a few minutes. After saying that, Nick Fury stood up and walked directly to his office. Now is not the time to hide his trump card. If he doesn't find a way to deal with Rogue today, there will be no more S.H.I.E.L.D. in the future. Nick Fury had originally thought that this would only be a tough battle against superhumans, but the development of the situation was completely out of his expectations. Now, only that woman can stop Rogue. Chapter 219. Rogue's strength at this time has far exceeded the expectations of Nick Fury and others. If they knew that Rogue was this powerful, they would never have made the so-called conquering Naruto plan. Although S.H.I.E.L.D. and the military don't like uncontrollable super combat power, it also depends on how strong this super combat power is. If it is really the kind of power that they can't resist, even if their brains are all eaten by dogs, they won't have any ideas about this kind of person. For people like them, the so-called principles can be changed at any time. After quickly returning to his office, Nick Fury took out a pager from the safe that seemed to be from the last century. I hope you can come back in time. Without any hesitation, Nick Fury started the pager that only had a one-sided notification function. A red and blue pattern appeared on the small display screen of the teleporter. In the middle of the pattern, there was an octagonal star with the top and bottom ends protruding. After seeing the pattern emerging from the pager, Nick Fury finally breathed a sigh of relief. This pager has been in his hands for decades, and he was just worried about whether the pager would work properly. Fortunately, the passage of time has not affected the pager's function. After doing all this, Nick Fury returned to his office on the top floor of the building. You just missed a wonderful scene. When Nick Fury returned, Ross didn't look back and said with a wry smile. What could be worse right now? Nick Fury didn't care about Ross's tone. At this time, no one can be happy. Picking up the remote control on the table, Nick Fury jumped back a few minutes on the surveillance screen. Then, he saw the wonderful scene that Ross had described. After losing 2 anti-gravity engines, the helicarrier was doomed to crash. However, Rogue, standing on the top of the tree, didn't stop there. The chakra chain wrapped around the helicarrier stopped retracting and surged wildly again. In front of the chakra chain, the metal hull of the helicarrier was easily pierced like a cream cake in a cake shop. Dozens of triangular chain arrows pierced the falling helicarrier into a hornet's nest. The damage to the hull caused the falling helicarrier to quickly disintegrate. The hull of the mothership began to crack, and the fighter jets that couldn't take off in time and the agents that couldn't escape fell like raindrops. Falling? Rogue never wanted the helicarrier to fall. If he only wanted to shoot down the helicarrier, he wouldn't even need to use King Kong blockade. He could just continue to fire the helicarrier bullets from Calamity. What he wanted was for S.H.I.E.L.D. and the military to understand what it meant to be irresistible. Without my permission, not only can you not fly, you don't even have the right to land. Dozens of pale golden chakra chains were like living vipers, crazily attacking everything in the air. Any being with a diameter of more than a meter would undoubtedly suffer the wrath of the chakra chains. Open your eyes and watch carefully. This is the true Vajra blockade. Logue's shout reached the ears of everyone present. Despair began to appear in their eyes as they witnessed something like a net that covered the sky and covered the sun. The original 3-meter-wide chakra chain, under Rog's control, instantly broke down into hundreds of chains like cell division. Although the newly broken chains were only 2 or 3 centimeters wide, the number of chains had increased by a terrifying amount. There were originally only dozens of chakra chains flying in the air. At this time, there were more than 3,000 chakra chains flying in the air. What did it mean to cover the sky? What did it mean to be airtight? What did it mean to have hundreds and thousands? This was it. More than 3,000 chakra chains formed an unimaginable attack net, like piranhas in the Amazon River, frantically nibbling away at the wreckage of the helicarrier. The damaged hull baffle, the burning Quinjet, the unfired missiles and shells, it's just that the things that fell from the helicarrier, whether they were metal or human, did not escape the fate of being attacked by the chakra chains. At this time, Rog was like a skilled knitter, using more than 3,000 chakra chains to weave a golden net in the sky that symbolizes destruction and death. The SHIELD agents and military soldiers who participated in this operation thought that the scene of Rog destroying the 2 helicarriers was shocking and amazing enough. But when they saw the net of death and destruction composed of chakra chains in front of them, they realized how naive their idea was. Is this a ninja? Is this the Yondaime Hokage? We are actually fighting against this kind of godlike enemy. All kinds of shocking thoughts emerged in the minds of these agents and soldiers. Rog proved with living facts what it means to be unrivaled. It wasn't until more than a minute later that the wreckage of the helicarrier finally fell to the ground, if these things can still be called wreckage. In the net of death and destruction composed of chakra chains, there is a layer of filter made of chains with pores no more than 3 centimeters. Only those who have passed through the filter will not be attacked by the chakra chains. Burning metal shards, broken corpses, unfired bullets, and bright red blood, an indescribable drizzle seemed to be falling from the sky. When the artificial drizzle was over, Rog directly lifted the effect of King Kong blockade, and the chakra chains flying in the sky disappeared in an instant. The 3rd helicarrier must retreat immediately. I don't care what method you plan to use to deal with Rog, the helicarriers must not be destroyed here. Alexander Pierce could no longer sit still. He didn't care what would happen to SHIELD, but he didn't want Hydra to lose even one helicarrier. There's no chance. Rog has already destroyed 2 helicarriers, do you think he will let go of the last one? Nick Fury tried to calm down, and the pain in his mechanical right arm seemed to come back. After hearing Nick Fury's words, Alexander Pierce wanted to continue to say something, but in the end, he didn't say anything and sat weakly on the sofa. As Nick Fury guessed, Rog had no intention of letting go of the 3rd helicarrier. If it was said that he might still have some compassion in his heart before, then the current him only believed in exterminating all of them. 3 kilometers, do you think you can escape my attack like this? After visually estimating the height of the 3rd helicarrier, Rog took out a flying Thor kunai enchanted by Odin and threw it into the air. Chapter 220. The flying Thor kunai thrown by Rog shot straight into the sky like a bullet, and the speed of its flight directly broke through the sound barrier, bursting out with a dull sound. The SHIELD agents and UA soldiers in the forest basically witnessed the scene of him throwing the flying Thor kunai, but they couldn't figure out what this dagger-sized flying Thor kunai could do. Does he want to use this small kunai to destroy the last helicarrier? Such questions couldn't help but appear in the minds of the agents and soldiers, and also in the minds of Nick Fury and the other 2. Although this is somewhat unbelievable, with the example of the previous 2 helicarriers, they didn't dare to underestimate this flying Thor kunai. Shield studied in detail the flying Thor kunai that Rog had left in Thunder Task Force, which was the one that was previously located in the center of the battlefield. However, they didn't get any useful information from that kunai. They knew that Rog could teleport through this kunai, but they couldn't figure out the secret, let alone reverse engineer Rog's teleportation. Except for the difference in color, the flying Thor kunai that Rog threw out now looked no different from the one they had studied before. What exactly does he want to do? As the one who has dealt with Rog the longest among the three, Nick Fury is 100% sure that Rog is definitely planning some extremely amazing plans now. More than 3,000 meters in the sky is an absolute domain that is difficult for ordinary people to reach. But for those who have the ability to fly, this height is nothing. Rog can fly directly to the helicarrier through the lightweight rock technique, but he doesn't intend to do so. The reason is simple: this is too inefficient. The flying Thor kunai that was enchanted by Odin didn't take much time. To be precise, it took less than 10 seconds to fly to the same height as the helicarrier. The flying Thor kunai didn't receive any attack from the helicarrier because he didn't aim it at the helicarrier in the first place. All he needed was a teleportation point that was high enough. The first helicarrier was destroyed by the spiral electromagnetic cannon, and the second one was destroyed by the King Kong blockade. Therefore, this last helicarrier had to be destroyed in a way that was worthy of it. When the Thor kunai reached a height higher than the helicarrier, Rog didn't hesitate and directly flying Thunder God left the forest. In the blink of an eye, he had reached an altitude of more than 3,000 meters. Stepping on the tip of Thor's kunai, he hovered steadily in the air. When he arrived here through the flying Thor, the helicarrier hundreds of meters away began to operate and aimed all kinds of guns and cannons at him. Rog ignored the helicarrier below as if he didn't see those weapons at all. He silently took out a cube that emitted a dark red glow. Rubik's Cube of Reality. The moment he took out the Rubik's Cube of Reality, Nick Fury, who saw this scene through the helicarrier's surveillance screen, suddenly remembered the Rubik's Cube that once belonged to S.H.I.E.L.D. These two things are too similar, aren't they? Except for the different colors, they were carved from the same mold. Nick Fury had guessed it right. They were indeed from the same mold. In other words, Odin was carved from the same mold as the Rubik's Cube of Reality. Although Rog hadn't done anything with the Rubik's Cube of Reality at this time, he simply took out the Rubik's Cube of Reality, but Nick Fury already began to have a bad feeling. Just when Nick Fury began to worry that the helicarrier's commander would forget to give the order to attack, the helicarrier below Rog unleashed the long-prepared bullets and shells. All kinds of bullets and shells flew towards Rog like lightning. However, just as these bullets and shells were about to hit Rog, who was only covered with a chakra coat, the Rubik's Cube of Reality in his right hand suddenly shone with a dazzling dark red light. The dark red light flashed away. The bullets and shells flying at high speed instantly turned into dark crows, chirping as they flew past Rog's side. Modifying reality. Using the ability of the Reality Stone, Rog instantly changed the shape of the bullets and shells, turning them into vivid crows. This is the reason why Infinity Stone can become a universe-level treasure and why it can attract the attention of the entire universe. Every Infinity Stone has the ability to directly change the rules. No matter how many bullets and shells the helicarrier fired, the bullets and shells all turned into pitch-black crows. It was an unimaginable scene, but one that was hard to accept. This is not a power that humans can understand, and this is not a power that humans can control. Unlike the shocked Nick Fury and the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, Rog's face was calm at this time. He didn't come all the way here from the forest just to put on a dramatic show like this. The highlight of the show that he really wanted to stage has not yet appeared. After taking a deep breath, he raised the Reality Stone in his hand again and slowly said in a voice that was neither loud nor soft, "Come out, nine-tailed demon fox." As soon as his voice fell, a behemoth that did not belong to this world appeared in the sky above the helicarrier. Then, it fell heavily on the deck of the helicarrier. Orange-yellow fur, 9 flying tails, claws and fangs that were several meters long. The nine-tailed demon fox that was dozens of meters tall and more than 200 meters long officially appeared. Using the reality stone, Rog created a nine-tailed demon fox that did not belong to this world, a nine-tailed demon fox that looked like an ancient demon beast. Although this nine-tailed demon fox was not the original nine-tailed demon fox, it did not have endless chakra in its body. Even its consciousness was simulated by the reality stone. However, this did not affect the sense of shock it brought. Although the agents on the helicarrier could not see the full appearance of nine-tailed demon fox, they knew that everything was over the moment nine-tailed demon fox landed on the deck of the helicarrier. Nick Fury and the other two had the same idea. In order to see nine-tailed demon fox's appearance, Nick Fury even urgently mobilized S.H.I.E.L.D.'s observation satellite and aimed the satellite's lens at the only remaining helicarrier. Is this really not an illusion? Even the knowledgeable Nick Fury could not help but widen his eyes after seeing nine-tailed demon fox's full appearance. As for Ross and Alexander Pierce, they were so shocked that they couldn't say a word. The helicarrier that was more than 300 meters long was like a cat's nest of inappropriate size. And nine-tailed demon fox, who was standing on top of this metal cat's nest, let out a roar that resounded through the world. Nine-tailed demon fox, enter. Chapter 221. Compared with the real Kyubi, the nine-tailed fox made by Rog with the reality gem may not even have 1% of the strength of the real one. But the nine-tailed fox still showed a strong suppression force on the battlefield. The 9 tails of the nine-tailed fox were like 9 indestructible swords, easily piercing the hull of the helicarrier. The Quinjets that tried to take off were swatted down by the nine-tailed fox like flies. As for the bullets and shells, they couldn't even penetrate the skin of the nine-tailed fox. The new generation of helicarrier carefully built by S.H.I.E.L.D. was like a fragile toy in front of the nine-tailed fox, constantly being destroyed. Explosions continued to sound, and black smoke and orange-red flames continued to surge on the helicarrier. Rog, standing on the flying Thor kunai, didn't participate in the attack. He just watched indifferently as the nine-tailed fox continued to destroy the helicarrier, and watched the weapon that symbolized S.H.I.E.L.D.'s most advanced technology continue to fall. It has to be said that as long as a creature has a large enough body size, even if this creature only has a beast-like physical attack, it can still show amazing destructive power. While the nine-tailed fox frantically destroyed the helicarrier, Rog also became more and more interested in the Kyubi Kurama in the system. If the real Kyubi appeared on the helicarrier now, then the helicarrier wouldn't even have a chance to crash. Just an ordinary Baijidama would be enough to make the helicarrier disappear from this world. When he has enough ninja coins in the future, he must exchange the real Kyubi. Even if he doesn't use it to fight, it's also a very pleasant thing to keep it as a pet. At this time, Rog was fantasizing about the good life in the future, while Nick Fury and the others in the Sanku Wing building were silent, and their faces were ugly. Ross is the least sad of the three because from the beginning of the war until now, Rog has been destroying S.H.I.E.L.D.'s helicarrier. Even the ground forces that were attacked by the Punisher and Abomination were only about half of the people on his side. The helicarrier is S.H.I.E.L.D.'s, and half of the ground forces are S.H.I.E.L.D.'s, so in the situation where everyone is miserable, he, who is relatively less miserable, is undoubtedly the winner in another sense. But even so, he is now regretting why he agreed to participate in Alexander Pierce's conquering Naruto plan. If he was a little more determined at the beginning, he would be the biggest winner today. The helicarrier is the world's strongest weapon, no one can resist its power. Recalling Alexander Pierce's words, Ross couldn't wait to shoot him now. Who asked you to speak so arrogantly? Who asked you to boast shamelessly? In less than 10 minutes, 3 of your so-called strongest weapons of war had been dismantled by the enemy. A total of 3 ships, and they were all made by one person. What was I thinking back then? Why did I believe Pierce's nonsense? Ross sighed helplessly. Nick Fury and Alexander Pierce heard Roth's sigh, and if possible, they were more regretful than Roth. No one thought that things would develop to such a one-sided point. They thought that Rog was at most similar to Thor. At most, he had a little more ability, he could discharge electricity, he could control wood, he could breathe fire. The serious misjudgment of Rog's strength caused them to completely lose the initiative and lose 3 helicarriers. Although the battle is not over yet, they have begun to think about the aftermath. What's more troublesome is that they now have no way of predicting what the final outcome will be. The air units have been completely wiped out, and the ground forces are still intact, but there is also the possibility of total annihilation. And with Rog's current strength, he may not stop after wiping out all the enemies present. We need reinforcements now, strong enough reinforcements. In the name of S.H.I.E.L.D., recruit the Avengers and let them stop Rog. Alexander Pierce turned to Nick Fury and said. If the Avengers can be recruited by S.H.I.E.L.D., then they are not Avengers. Rog's friendship with the Avengers is deeper than yours and mine. Iron Man Tony is his friend, Thor is his friend, and Dr. Banner owes him a favor. Nick Fury did not mention the 3 members of the American team. As for the reason, it was needless to say. I have already informed the reinforcements, if they can come back. Boom! 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 The wreckage of the helicarrier fell to the edge of the forest, and the sound of explosions rang out one after another. In the orange-red flames of the explosion, the hill-like 9-tailed fox walked out and walked towards the other side of the forest. That direction was the direction with the most enemies. At this time, Rog stood on the head of 9-tailed fox, his white haori fluttering in the wind. After witnessing the scene of Rog destroying 3 helicarriers in succession, most of these agents and soldiers on the ground lost their fighting spirit. It's not that their will is not strong enough, nor is it that they are not loyal enough, but what happened today is far beyond their imagination of power. They never thought that someone could pull down a helicarrier that weighs tens of thousands of tons, and they never thought that someone could summon a hill-like monster. Especially when the 9-tailed fox, which is dozens of meters tall, really came in front of them, they understood what is called instinctive fear. Rog ignored these agents and soldiers who had lost their fighting spirit, but he did not intend to let these people go. Unless he allows it, no one can leave here alive today. After ignoring these agents and soldiers, he turned his attention to his former subordinates. Thunder agents. Red Tank and others did not participate in the first wave of attack. The task they received was to give Rog the final blow at the right time, kill him on the spot, or make him completely lose the ability to resist. In order to give them such an opportunity, the task of consuming Rog's power was handed over to the helicarrier, S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, and military soldiers. But this consumption plan was declared a failure before it could be implemented. Kneel. After looking at Red Tank and others, Rog said in an indifferent tone. He did not say what the consequences would be if they did not kneel, because there was no need for any explanation. Although he used to be the nominal captain of the Thunder agents, and he just showed his overbearing strength. However, after he finished speaking and knelt down, no one in the Thunder Secret Service team chose to kneel down. They just silently got into a combat posture. Chapter 222. During their first encounter with Rog, the 5 members of the Thunderbolt Secret Service team had already experienced the huge difference in strength between them and Rog. Other than Red Tank, the other 4 were defeated in one move. Logically speaking, they had already experienced a crushing defeat once, so it was impossible for them to have such unrealistic fantasies of defeating Log. However, at this moment, all of them were in a fighting stance without any exception. None of them was willing to back down. Rog did not care too much about the Thunderbolt Secret Service team's choice. Since you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish. Under the watchful eyes of Red Tank and the others, Rog, who was standing on top of the 9-tailed fox's head, disappeared instantly. Without any hesitation, Red Tank and the others quickly assumed a defensive formation the moment Rog disappeared. Red Tank took the lead and stood in front of everyone. At the same time, Melissa the singing bird also chirped, emitting ultrasonic waves that were undetectable to human ears. After the previous lesson, they knew very well that if they were to fight alone, they would not have any chance of winning. If one person was not enough, the 5 of them would attack together. Red Tank and Luke Cage protected Singing Bird in the center of the formation. The Moonlight Stone, which was emitting a dazzling light, stood behind Singing Bird and covered its body with the energy of the Moonlight Stone. As for Ghost, who was the most timid of them all, she immediately entered stealth mode and disappeared from everyone's sight. Singing Bird was responsible for attacking with sound waves, while the others were responsible for protecting Singing Bird. Ghost moved around the periphery, looking for an opportunity to launch a sneak attack. It had to be said that the Thunderbolt Secret Service team's response was indeed commendable. However, just like Nick Fury, they had seriously underestimated Rogue's strength. The last time they fought, Roger didn't have any killing intent on his body. Therefore, his attacks were more gentle to a certain extent. At this moment, he had no intention of holding back. He did not care about the sound waves emitted by Singing Bird. In other words, he simply ignored the various effects of Singing Bird's sound waves. As a superpower user who could control sound waves, Singing Bird clearly did not understand the true power of sound waves. Controlling sound waves to cause various negative mental states to the enemy was a huge waste. Bang! Just as everyone was looking for Rogue, a violent gunshot rang out from behind Red Tank and the others. Calamity Pistol, Fatal Shot. The Calamity Pistol that fired chakra bullets could not make any sound, but Rogue had asked AI Choi to specially add a gunshot function. It was not his style to shoot while hiding in the dark. Gunshots rang out, and Rogue and Ghost's figures appeared. At this time, Spectre had completely lost his head, and Rogue, who was holding the Calamity Pistol, was standing behind him. Headshot. Even if Ghost wasn't the weakest member of the Thunderbolt Secret Service team, she was still the easiest to deal with. Without any supernatural powers, he could only rely on the Wraith battle suit to fight. Moreover, his Spectre combat suit only had 2 forms, invisible and formless. No matter which form he chose, Rogue was not confident that he could defeat him in one move. The only difference was which move to use. Before Spectre's body fell to the ground, Rogue's figure disappeared again. In less than 2 seconds, the Thunderbolt Secret Service team had lost a member. Crying Bird's ultrasonic attack continued, but in such a short time, it was not enough to cause any impact on Rogue's mental state. Compared to Rogue, whose mental state was still extremely stable, Crying Bird's teammates and the US soldiers in the distance were more seriously affected. Although the ultrasonic attack was an attack that could not be detected by the naked eye, the characteristics of the sound waves meant that this attack could not be effectively locked onto a single target. Unless Crying Bird could shoot out the sound waves like energy shock waves with her hands like Moonlight Scala. Otherwise, her comrades around her would also be affected by her attack. Compared to Red Tank and the others, Rogue had an advantage that could not be ignored. When it came to mental attacks like illusions, he was the real expert. After dealing with the weakest Spectre, he did not stop attacking and instantly arrived in front of Luke Cage. Luke Cage's superpower was very simple. It was a simple invulnerability and superhuman strength. Other than that, there was nothing special about Luke Cage. Even in terms of combat skills, Luke Cage only knew ordinary martial arts. For Rogue, this level of enemy was at most a matter of one move. Last time, in order to not harm Luke Cage's life, he chose to attack with Rasengan. But now, he did not have to worry about that anymore. After the Calamity Pistol let out a loud gunshot, Luke Cage was already 120% alert. He involuntarily moved closer to the Red Tank. However, his small actions did not increase his chances of survival at all. A silver-white arc of light instantly appeared in front of him and occupied his entire vision. When the silver-white light flashed, he heard Rogue's emotionless voice. Lightning release, Thunderbolt Sword Slash. Luke Cage's skin was comparable to metal and could ignore most gun attacks. However, this defensive ability was meaningless in front of Rog, who could easily cut through steel. Whether it was the Thousand Birds blade or the Thunderbolt Sword Slash, they could instantly cut through steel. The reason why Rog chose to use the Thunderbolt Sword Slash instead of the Thousand Birds blade was very simple. Luke Cage did not even have the qualifications for him to draw his sword. Luke Cage's head flew into the air. Bright red blood spurted out and landed on Red Tank's body. Because of the moonlight energy enveloping the crying bird and moonlight stone, they were not stained with any blood. Even though Luke Cage was standing right beside him, he could protect Luke Cage with just a slight lift of his right hand. However, Red Tank did not notice Rog's appearance at all. Only when Luke Cage's head flew up did Red Tank barely catch sight of Rog's disappearing figure. After killing Spectre and Luke Cage, Rog still had no intention of stopping. No matter why the members of Thunderbolt's Secret Service chose to be enemies with him, he had no intention of letting them leave. Since he had chosen a side, he had to be responsible for his choice. The moonlight energy formed an energy shield that blocked the blood spurting out of Luke Cage's body, but when she saw the blood that was only a few centimeters away from her, crying bird Melissa involuntarily stopped attacking. Fear made her instinctively stop screaming. Chapter 223. After a few months of psychological treatment, Singing Bird Melissa thought that she had completely forgotten the terrifying feeling of having countless disgusting bugs crawling all over her body. However, when she saw Luke Cage's blood flowing down her energy shield, she once again recalled the terrifying experience that caused her to have nightmares for a few weeks. "No, I don't want to. Don't come over, don't come over, don't come over." In the eyes of ordinary people, Singing Bird Melissa was a superhero with superpowers. However, even after receiving special training from the Thunderbolt Task Force, it did not change the fact that she was just an ordinary person with superpowers. The existence of superpowers did not give her a strong enough mental state. Her mental state was still that of an ordinary person's. She was not a professional soldier and did not have much combat experience. She had not even killed anyone with her own hands. Any psychological stimulation that was strong enough could completely destroy her psychological defense, burying painful memories in her heart that she would never forget. The illusion that Logue had cast on her was undoubtedly a typical example of this. Not everyone was suitable to become a warrior, and not everyone had a strong enough mental state. Having superpowers was Singing Bird Melissa's fortune. However, not having the will to match her superpowers was her misfortune. The fear in her mind was quickly reflected in her body. Singing Bird Melissa first stopped attacking. Then, after a few seconds of silence, she released a sound wave attack that did not differentiate between friend and foe. Ah! Unlike the previous sound wave attack that only affected one's mental state, this time the Singing Bird released a sound wave attack that was more physical. With the Singing Bird as the center, the terrifying sound wave energy spread out in all directions like a hurricane. The impact of the sound wave energy directly sent the moonstone behind her flying. Even the shockingly large Red Tank could not help but take a few steps forward under the attack of the sound wave before finally stabilizing herself. As the attacker, Rog did not expect the Singing Bird to have such a strong reaction after seeing Luke Cage's blood. He could not help but wonder if the Singing Bird had some kind of relationship with Luke Cage that was beyond friendship. Although his mind was filled with random thoughts, his actions did not show any signs of stopping. The Singing Bird's sudden outburst provided him with a better opportunity to attack. According to his plan, he had planned to deal with the Moonlight Rock first. After dealing with the protection of the moonlight energy, he would deal with the Singing Bird. However, the Crying Bird's sonic attack sent the Moonlight Stone behind her flying. At the same time, she lost the protection of the moonlight energy. Was this an unexpected surprise? Without any hesitation, Rog took out the Calamity pistol again and aimed it at the crazily howling crying bird. Bang! Fatal shot. Another intense gunshot came from the Calamity pistol. Although they were all fatal shots, Rog fired 2 chakra bullets. The crying bird's sonic attack was still ongoing. Regardless of whether she was aware of Rog's attack or not, the sonic energy she emitted would provide her with some form of protection. Sure enough, just as Rog expected, the first chakra bullet was completely destroyed by the sound wave energy before it could reach the crying bird, dissipating into the air. Although the sound wave energy cancelled out the first chakra bullet, it did not have the time to cancel out the second chakra bullet. The 2 chakra bullets seemed to fly out at the same time, but in reality, there was a problem that was difficult to detect between the 2 chakra bullets. Using the opening created by the first chakra bullet, the second chakra bullet successfully broke through the obstruction of the sound wave energy and arrived in front of the crying bird. The light blue chakra bullet hit the forehead of the crying bird, and the huge impact and penetrating force made the crying bird's head explode instantly, like a watermelon falling from a high altitude, splitting into pieces. The headless crying bird fell back under the impact of the impact. The ear-piercing and powerful sound wave attack instantly disappeared. The crying bird was dead? The crying bird had died so easily. In Roth's plan, the crying bird Melissa was the main attacker. All the arrangements were based on the crying bird's ability to continuously emit sound wave attacks. However, such a main attacker with high hopes was killed by Rog in an incomparably straightforward manner. A headshot. Another headshot. After seeing the scene of the crying bird falling to the ground, Roth and the Sanku Wing building suddenly couldn't sit still. Just now, he was still rejoicing that the main loss was S.H.I.E.L.D., but in just a few minutes, there were only 2 people left in his Thunderbolt agents team. It's over, it's really over this time. If even the Thunderbolt agents team can't effectively stop Rog, Roth can't think of anyone else in his hands who can stop Rog. Just like Roth, Moonlight Stone Carla was also shocked. As the only 2 female members of the Thunderbolt agents team, her relationship with the crying bird Melissa was naturally much closer. Especially after living together for a few months, they even vaguely showed signs of becoming best friends. But all of this had come to an end. After witnessing the death of the crying bird Melissa, Moonlight Stone Carla had no time to grieve. She once again urged the Moonlight Stone in her body, intending to fly directly away. Whether it was a mission or a threat, she didn't want to pay attention to it now. Even if Roth would punish her in the future, it would only happen if she continued to live. After making up her mind, Moonlight Stone Carla didn't even look at the red tank in front of her and looked directly up at the sky. I want to get out of here, I have to get out of here alive. However, Moonlight Stone Carla didn't fly as smoothly as usual. At the same time, there was a burst of heart-wrenching pain in her chest. Your teammate just died and you want to leave? Rog's voice came from behind Moonlight Stone Carla, but Stone Carla didn't look back but looked down at her chest. It was a right hand wrapped in silver-white electric current, and in this right hand, there was a gem emitting a golden light. This is the Moonlight Gem. Stone Carla recognized this gem at a glance because all her extraordinary abilities came from this Moonlight Gem. Before she had time to think about it, Rog pulled out his right hand that had completely penetrated Stone Carla's body and removed Chidori in his hand. After Rog pulled out his right hand, Stone Carla suddenly fell forward, a large amount of blood flowing out of her chest that had been penetrated by Chidori. Just as Rog was about to put away the Moonlight Gem, Stone Carla, who was lying on the ground, struggled to get up. She knelt on the ground and looked up at Rog, trembling as she reached out her right hand. Moonlight Stone, give me back my Moonlight Stone. Chapter 224. Do you want this? Rog said frivolously as he looked at Kara, who was kneeling on the ground and trying to reach out her right hand. At the same time, he continued to play with the Moonlight Gem in his hand. Give it to me, please, give it back, to me," Kara, who was severely injured, said in a pleading tone. Every time she opened her mouth, she would spit out some blood. "Why should I give it back to you? Give me a reason. If you can convince me, I don't mind giving it back to you." As far as he knew, Kara's moonlight gem was actually a Kree gravity stone. It was driven by some unknown energy and connected to Kara's nervous system. Using the moonlight gem's energy, she could fly or concentrate the gravity into a shockwave. Of course, she could also directly launch the moonlight gem's energy or use it to protect herself. In addition, the moonlight gem could also reduce her body's density and make her immune to physical and magical attacks. It also gave her extraordinary physical strength, endurance, speed, and so on. If she could obtain a second moonlight gem, she could also control matter, create force fields, teleport, increase the gravity on the target, crush it, and even create a miniature black hole. Unfortunately, the second moonlight gem was already lost. From Kara's previous performance, her control of the moonlight gem was still very elementary. She could only use the energy to attack, defend, and fly. The moonlight gem was also connected to Kara's life force. Even if she was not injured, as long as she lost the moonlight gem for a certain period of time, she would also die. Perhaps it was because of the connection between her life force and the moonlight gem that Kara did not die in a short period of time after being attacked by Chidori. I can help you do anything," Kara, who was still bleeding from her chest, tried to answer Rog's question. In order to survive, she would do anything. "Help me? Are you sure I need your help?" As soon as Rog finished speaking, Red Tank rushed in front of him, intending to directly hit the enemy who had killed 3.5 of his teammates. Red Tank could have attacked earlier, but when Rog was talking to Kara, he used his not-so-smart brain to think about whether to continue attacking Rog. Red Tank had a deeper impression of Rog than the others. After all, other than the abomination, he was the only one who had experienced Arhat's physical transformative fist. After some serious consideration, the Red Tank finally decided to continue attacking Rog. However, his decision had nothing to do with Ross's plan to conquer Naruto. All he wanted was to have a good fight with Rog. Although the reason was simple and crude, it was enough for Red Tank. But this time, he was destined to be disappointed. Just as he was about to hit Rog, he was sent flying by a claw that was even bigger than him. This was the right claw of the nine-tailed demon fox. Ever since she sent Rog over from the other side of the forest, Nine-Tailed Fox had been paying attention to the Red Tank's actions. Although Rog didn't give it any specific instructions, the Nine-Tailed Fox didn't hesitate to make a move when it realized that the Red Tank was going to hit Rog. After sending the Red Tank flying into the forest, Nine-Tailed Demon Fox immediately chased after him and pounced into the forest. Its 9 tails were like steel whips that kept hitting the Red Tank who had just landed. "No. I didn't mean. I can do anything, as long as you tell me, anything." Looking at Kara who was begging for mercy on the ground, Rog suddenly laughed. Although Kara's ability was nothing in his eyes, he had to admit that Kara's curvy figure and delicate face were still a little valuable. "Forget it, who told me to have tender feelings for the fairer sex? Just this once, don't do it again." After that, Rog threw the moonlight gem in his hand to Kara as if he was throwing a worthless stone. After hurriedly catching the moonlight gem thrown by Rog, Kara didn't hesitate and directly put the moonlight gem back into the hole in her chest. Under Kara's control, the moonlight gem emitted a strong golden light and completely shrouded her whole body. Rog didn't know what Kara was doing, and he didn't care what Kara would do. If Kara went back on her words, he could take her life at any time. "I can give it to you, and I can take it back." When the golden light dissipated, Kara, who was on the verge of death, once again had a strong aura of life. If it weren't for the 2 very obvious holes and blood on her armor, Kara didn't look much different from before. "Cooperate with the Punishers and Abominations to eliminate all the soldiers here. After that, Rog didn't even look at Kara and directly flew in the direction of Nine-Tailed Demon Fox. The matter with the Moonlight Gem and Kara could be settled for the time being. Now it was time to deal with the most troublesome Red Tank. The Red Tank had the magic of the Crimson Universe's ruler, Setarak. His power was inexhaustible, his stamina was inexhaustible, and his body was almost indestructible. The best way to deal with such an indescribably tough enemy was to use a seal or directly exile him to another space. Rog didn't know any spells like spatial exile. He had mastered 2 sealing spells, but he didn't plan to use them now. This was because he wanted to try a seemingly unrealistic idea, a method that wasn't scientific at all. After being sent flying by Nine-Tailed Demon Fox, the Red Tank fell into the forest. Before he could get up from the ground, Nine-Tailed Demon Fox's 9 tails kept hitting him, as if giving him the cruelest whipping. The Nine-Tailed Demon Fox's tail strikes were indeed very powerful, and could easily break steel. However, the Red Tank relied on his unimaginably strong body to take all of Nine-Tailed Demon Fox's attacks. And for some reason, as the number of hits increased, the Red Tank inexplicably felt a strange sense of pleasure. Rog once again came to the Nine-Tailed Demon Fox's head and looked down at the Red Tank. He then took out the reality cube that he had used once. The Red Tank's most common attack method was to use the potential energy accumulated while running to destroy everything in front of him. So Rog planned to directly take away the Red Tank's best attack method. Modify reality. The reality cube shone again, and the dark red light hit the Red Tank like a shockwave. Then, under Rog's gaze, the Red Tank's figure instantly changed. The Red Tank that was nearly 3 meters tall disappeared and was replaced by a cube that was half a meter long. It was a living cube that still had life. Chapter 225. In terms of life form, Red Tank was still a human. However, he no longer had a human form. Instead, he had become a flat cube. Therefore, in terms of damage, Red Tank did not suffer any serious damage. Unless Rog could keep him in this state, Red Tank would return to his original appearance sooner or later. Rog jumped down from Nine-Tailed Fox's head and went directly to Red Tank, who could not move. He silently looked at him. The Red Tank's face changed from a 3-dimensional to a flat surface, completely appearing on the top of the cube. You should still be able to hear me, but looking at you now, I don't think you can answer my question. Red Tank could not even blink, let alone answer Rog's question. His face was like a real picture, engraved on the top of the cube. I don't know what you're thinking, but I don't have much time to deal with you now. So, I plan to give you a chance. I don't ask you to be my subordinate, and I don't care who you will be. My request is simple, and that is to not provoke me. You do have a very powerful existence behind you, and he gave you power. I didn't kill you just to give him face, do you understand? After 30 minutes, you will return to your original appearance. If you still want to fight, I will accompany you to the end. After saying that expressionlessly, Rog left the forest without looking back. The Crimson Tank was not very strong, but the Crimson ruler Setarak behind him was an undeniably ferocious individual. Even with the gem of reality in hand, Rog had no confidence in defeating Setarak. However, if it really came to the point where he had to fight to the death with Setarak, he would definitely not surrender obediently. Whether he could win or not was one thing, but whether he had the courage to fight was another. When Rog left the forest, Nine-Tailed Fox looked at Red Tank, who had turned into a cube, with some reluctance, but in the end, he did nothing and followed Rog out of the forest. The most threatening helicarrier and thunder agents were taken care of by Rog. As for the remaining shield agents and military soldiers, they can be handed over to Abomination and Punisher. Strictly speaking, Nine-Tailed Fox and Moonlight Rock, who had just recovered, should be added. Rog was not interested in dealing with those miscellaneous soldiers, and now, he has more important things to solve. Whether it is the agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or the soldiers of the military, they are just involuntary chess pieces. The people who are really in charge of playing chess are now in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s headquarters, Sanku Wing Building. After using the super light rock technique, Rog flew towards the Sanku Wing Building. So this is your carefully planned, conquering Hokage plan? It's really well planned. After seeing the picture of Rog killing Thunder agents through the drone, Ross had completely lost hope and directly turned on the ridicule mode. If S.H.I.E.L.D. hadn't bewitched him, he wouldn't have been able to participate in this plan. Although Roger had only joined the Thunderbolt agents on the surface, it was still much better than the current situation. Okay, don't complain. Doesn't your military also want to master the power of ninjutsu? It doesn't make sense to complain about this now. Nick Fury took a deep breath and said slowly. The plan to conquer Naruto can be declared a complete failure. Now the most important thing to do is not to complain to each other, but to think about how to deal with the aftermath. At this time, Rog has disappeared from the surveillance screen of the drone, but the three of them can be 100% sure that Rog is coming towards the Sanku Wing Building. Return his things to him, and add a generous enough compensation, which may ease his hostility a little. Alexander Pierce, who had not spoken, gave his own advice at this time. But after he said this, Nick Fury and Ross both looked at him as if he was an idiot. If Rog was really so easy to deal with, he wouldn't have killed him just now. They took away Rog's $1.8 billion in the bank, captured his men, sealed all his assets, and broke up his company. Abominations and Punishers were subjected to inhumane and cruel research, and Dr. Connors is still locked in a secret prison. Sky was tortured on a spiritual level, and Erica was killed on the spot to protect Sky. Not to mention that they also found part of the extremis equation from Dr. Connors' laboratory, as well as the lizard serum developed by Dr. Connors. If it weren't for Rog having completely destroyed the research data of the super spider equation a long time ago, there might be one more person in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s prison now. Not to mention that Rog is a powerhouse with extraordinary powers. Even an ordinary person would have the idea of blood for blood after being treated like this. Compensation is not impossible, don't forget, he is just one person. I am the Minister of the World Security Council, Nick is the Director of S.H.I.E.L.D., Ross, you are the Secretary of State and a representative of the military. As long as the three of us join forces to put pressure on him, he may not dare to fight against so many forces. Unless, he intends to fight against the whole world by himself. Alexander Pierce still insists on his opinion. In his opinion, there is no grievance that can't be solved by compensation. If there is, it means that the compensation is not enough. The whole world? When did the three of you represent the whole world? As soon as Alexander Pierce finished speaking, Rog's voice came from the direction of the door. Looking at the sound, they saw Rog pushing open the door and coming in, and the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents lying behind him. This time, we were wrong. To express our apology, we can give you a satisfactory compensation. We are all Americans, and we all want to make this country stronger, so, I hope you can. Alexander Pierce took the lead and walked towards Rog, speaking as he walked. However, before he could finish, Rog took out the Calamity pistol. Boom! Pulling out the gun, shooting, all in one breath. Alexander Pierce's head exploded like a balloon, and bright red blood and brain fragments splashed everywhere. I am not an American, and I don't have any good feelings for this country, do you understand, Mr. Pierce? Rog killed Pierce like he was crushing an ant, then walked to the middle of the living room and sat down casually. Year 55 Macallan Riley, a piece of ice. Putting the Kusanagi sword and the disaster pistol on the table, Rog pointed to a bottle of limited edition top-grade whiskey in the wine rack and said to Ross in a tone of command. Chapter 226. For Rog's attitude at this time, Ross had an extremely strong feeling of being insulted, and a strong anger ignited in his heart. But after seeing the silver-white disaster pistol on the table, he finally stood up silently, went to the wine rack, and took out the bottle of Macallan's top whiskey. A piece of ice. After putting the whiskey with a piece of ice in front of Rog, Ross sat back on the sofa without saying a word. Rog doesn't have much interest in whiskey, but he has heard a little about this Macallan Riley 55. There are only 420 bottles released worldwide, each bottle has an independent identification number, and the cheapest bottle has sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars. With Pierce's identity, it is obviously not appropriate to have such a bottle of wine in the office. However, not many people can express their dissatisfaction. After picking up the glass and taking a sip, Rog found that he couldn't taste the difference between this limited edition top whiskey and ordinary whiskey at all. Rog, boom. The disaster pistol on the table instantly came to Rog's hand and an ordinary chakra bullet was fired. Don't disturb me when I'm drinking, understand? Roger didn't kill Nick Fury right away. Instead, he shot him in the knee of his right foot, shattering his right kneecap. Nick Fury and Ross didn't expect that Rog was still so strong at this time. Just before Rog shot, they thought that Rog was finally willing to sit down and talk to them seriously. Nick Fury endured the severe pain from his right leg and directly pulled out the belt on his pants and tied it to his right thigh. In this room that symbolized the highest power of S.H.I.E.L.D., Pierce's body lay on the ground not far from the door. S.H.I.E.L.D.'s current director Nick Fury was sweating and blood flowed down his calf to the ground. In the silent room, Rog was still looking for the uniqueness of this Macallan Riley 55 whiskey. Although no one gave instructions, a few minutes after Pierce lay dead, a team of heavily armed S.H.I.E.L.D. agents came to the office and pointed their guns at Rog with a glass. "Get out. You don't need to deal with this." Nick Fury whispered in pain and waved impatiently at the team of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. The team of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents left the office in confusion, but they didn't go far, they stayed in the aisle outside the office. As long as Nick Fury gave the order, they could rush in and launch a fierce attack at any time. Rog ignored the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents and drank the whiskey that was more expensive than gold in the glass. He put down the glass in his hand and slowly said, "I know you still have a trump card, and I know you are waiting for her to come back." After a few seconds of silence, Nick Fury replied, "Yes, so I think we may not have to go to the point of life and death." Ha 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 ha. Nick Fury, you haven't performed a frontline mission for a long time, have you? With just a glance at Nick Fury's left leg, Captain Marvel knew that his injury wasn't fatal. It's just that his leg shouldn't be able to recover. At this moment, Captain Marvel Carol finally understood what Rog meant when he said that he had angered her. "Since you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish." Captain Marvel Carol suddenly swung her right fist, and a gorgeous energy shockwave followed her fist and attacked Rog like lightning. Lightning release, Chidori sharp spear. Captain Marvel wasn't the only one who could generate energy. Rog also could. Chapter 227. The gorgeous photon energy from Captain Marvel's right fist collided with Rog's left hand's Chidori Iguchi. The collision of two completely different types of energy produced a blazing light, and electric sizzling sounds could be heard. In terms of energy properties, Chidori Iguchi's lightning energy was far inferior to Captain Marvel's photon energy. But Chidori Iguchi was a ninjutsu move carefully developed by Rog. In terms of control, it was far superior to Captain Marvel's photon energy. With his exquisite control, Rog blocked Captain Marvel's attack with his Chidori sharp spear, which only had the thunder attribute. It was the first time Captain Marvel had met an enemy like Rog. Boom! After a few seconds of stalemate, Chidori Iguchi and the photon energy exploded at the same time, and the violent energy swept out like a hurricane. The tables and chairs in the office were instantly blown away, and the floor and ceiling were instantly blasted open. The two unlucky guys, Nick Fury and Ross, were directly sent flying to the wall. Before the energy storm caused by the explosion dissipated, Rog's left hand pulled out the Kusanagi sword at his waist. Lightning body blink. Chidori blade. Rog instantly appeared in front of Captain Marvel like lightning, and the Kusanagi sword in his left hand directly slashed at Captain Marvel's neck. Although Captain Marvel was from the U.S. Air Force, she had also received Kree warrior training. However, Captain Marvel's fighting skills were still not advanced. This might also have something to do with the fact that she could release energy at will. After all, compared to punching and kicking, it was obviously easier to use the energy in the body to attack and defend. Clang! The Kusanagi sword wrapped in lightning hit Captain Marvel's neck without any suspense. Then, there was a muffled sound as if it had struck gold. The gorgeous light emitted from Captain Marvel's body not only made her look like the most distinguished VVIP player in the game, but it also gave her a layer of energy field with amazing defensive power. To cause damage to Captain Marvel, one must first break through the defense of this energy field. Chidori blade didn't cause any damage to Captain Marvel, but it triggered Captain Marvel's second wave of attack. Captain Marvel's body suddenly shone brightly, and the energy in her body exploded like a bomb, attacking 360 degrees without any blind spots. Rog, who was already covered in a layer of chakra, didn't hesitate to use ninjutsu again. Lightning evasion, lightning cloak protection. Chakra alone might not be able to withstand Carol's energy eruption. However, with the lightning cloak's protection, Rog was 80% confident that he could take on this wave of attacks without taking any damage. Rog didn't know if it was because Carol was afraid of hurting the others in the building, but he felt that her energy burst wasn't powerful enough. The lightning cloak and chakra cloak blocked all the energy attacks. Rog's body didn't even sway. Captain Marvel had unleashed an energy blast of this level. Although Carol had intentionally controlled the intensity of the energy blast, the energy storm still completely destroyed the office that had been plagued with disasters. Carol might have held back the power of his attack for fear of hurting the innocent. However, Rog was not worried about this at all. To him, everyone in the Sanku Wing building was basically his enemy. Therefore, as soon as Carlo's counterattack ended, he raised the Calamity pistol in his hand and aimed it at Carlo's head. Against an enemy of Captain Marvel's level, normal shots and fatal shots were meaningless. Spiral railgun. Rog decisively pulled the trigger, and the fist-sized spiral railgun instantly appeared in front of Carol. Although Carol had never seen the power of the spiral railgun, her body instinctively warned her of danger. I can't let this energy ball explode here. Absolutely not. Carol was considered an experienced superhero, although she spent most of her time active in outer space. However, when faced with this kind of attack that could hurt a large number of civilians, she made the choice of a superhero instead of a warrior. She suddenly stretched out her hands and grabbed the spiral railgun that was about to hit her head. Ever since the invention of the spiral railgun, this was the first time Rog saw someone catch his own spiral railgun with their bare hands. What surprised him even more was that Carol actually used the energy in her body to forcibly stop the explosion of the spiral railgun. Interesting. Although they were on different sides, it had to be said that Captain Marvel's move was very ingenious. After grabbing the still madly spinning spiral railgun, Captain Marvel did not hesitate at all. His whole body soared into the sky and flew directly into the sky. Rumble. A few seconds later, Rog heard the familiar explosion of the spiral railgun. The spiral railgun that Captain Marvel brought to the sky exploded in the air, creating a huge blue ball of light like the sun. The blazing light and the terrifying energy storm were like a nuclear bomb detonated in the air. Although the spiral railgun that could destroy a helicarrier was powerful, it was still not enough in front of Captain Marvel, who was like a cheater. After all, this was a fierce person who could withstand the ballistic missiles of a Kree battleship. Among all the superheroes, Captain Marvel was considered one of the luckiest. She was originally just an ordinary person, but after blowing up the light-speed engine made by Michael Weir, she was lucky enough to fuse the Tesseract energy in the light-speed engine with Michael Weir's Kree genes. After waking up, she became Captain Marvel, who could control and absorb energy, and had a more amazing physique than Thor. This level of luck was almost the same as hitting the jackpot in the universe. After the explosion of the spiral railgun, Captain Marvel, who was glowing all over, once again flew back to the Triangular Wings building. "You've gone too far, don't you know that this will hurt innocent civilians?" Captain Marvel's tone was full of anger, as if Rog was a heinous perverted killer. "Innocent? Ha ha ha, you say the people in this building are innocent? What right do you have to say that they are innocent? Do you know how many civilians die because of S.H.I.E.L.D. every year? Do you know how many lives S.H.I.E.L.D. has destroyed for the so-called world peace? You don't know anything. How can a superhero like you care about the life and death of ordinary people? In your eyes, what you think is justice. Innocent? You don't deserve to say that." Rog became more and more disgusted with this so-called American justice. "You don't defend justice, it's just justice that suits your interests. You always feel that you have an obligation to protect the common people, you always feel that you have a responsibility to uphold justice. Why, just because both of you like to wear tight clothes, just because your hair is curly, just because your skin is whiter. Justice, *ck your justice." Captain Marvel was not satisfied with Rog's answer. However, Rog did not need her to be satisfied. Spiral railgun. The Calamity pistol sounded again, and 2 spiral railgun shots flew out like lightning. Captain Marvel would never have thought that Rog not only had no intention of restraining himself, but had become even more unyielding. Ever since she became a superhero, this was the first time she felt such intense anger. "You're courting death." Chapter 228. Captain Marvel Carol displayed astonishing speed. With one in each hand, he grabbed the 2 spiral electromagnetic cannons that Rog shot at him. After being provoked by Rog, Captain Marvel Carol became completely serious. She had thought that Rog was just a slightly extreme esper, but it turned out that Rog was much more extreme than she had imagined. If she allowed the 2 electromagnetic cannons to explode, she might not be fatally injured, but no one else in the building would be able to leave alive. The strong killing intent made her do something she would never have done in the past. Carol's hands, which were wrapped in energy, suddenly exerted force, and the powerful electromagnetic cannons were crushed by her. Rumble. A terrifying energy storm surged out of her hands. The moment the electromagnetic cannons exploded, Carol's hands also surged with energy that was far more powerful than before. The energy of the explosion was firmly wrapped around her hands. In order to suppress the explosive power of the electromagnetic cannons, Carol pushed the energy in her body to the limit. The brilliant light made her emit a blazing light like a supernova explosion. Carol, who had seen the power of the electromagnetic cannons, knew very well that it was impossible to suppress the explosive power of the electromagnetic cannons with her own energy. Moreover, it was 2 electromagnetic cannons that had exploded. She definitely could not suppress it, but once she gave up, the 2 spiral electromagnetic cannons would completely destroy the building like a nuclear bomb. Even the river and forest next to the building would be completely destroyed by the explosion. Absolutely control the power of the explosion. Carol had never thought that she would be forced into such a passive position one day. However, she still had no intention of letting the electromagnetic cannons explode. Since she couldn't suppress it, she would absorb it. The Tesseract didn't just give her control over energy. All of this happened in a flash. Carol used her own energy to suppress the explosion of the electromagnetic cannons while crazily absorbing the energy of the explosion. She wanted to control the power of the explosion within a controllable range. However, Rog wouldn't give her such a chance. Rog didn't have the habit of watching his enemies neutralize his attacks. Extraordinary Strength Fist. While Carol was suppressing and absorbing the energy from the electromagnetic gun, Rog flashed in front of her. His right fist wrapped in chakra viciously punched Carol's energy field. Bang! Carol, who was absorbing the energy, was sent flying by Rog's punch. Although the monstrous strength fist couldn't break through Carol's defensive energy field, it was enough to send her flying. Carlo did not dare to let go, nor did he dare to fight back. This was because the moment she let go, the explosive energy that she had suppressed in her hands would spread out like a hurricane. As soon as Carol managed to maintain her flying posture, Logue appeared in front of her again with his super lightweight rock technique. His monstrous strength fists landed on her body one after another. To be precise, it was her defensive energy field. Bang! 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 One strike after another sounded like war drums, and the dull sound constantly stimulated the shield agents in the Sanku E building. Most of the shield agents didn't know what was going on now. The only thing they could be sure of now was that the office on the top floor had been invaded, and there was a terrifying explosion over the building. In addition, all they could see was the picture of Rog beating Captain Marvel in the air. They recognized Rog, but they had no idea who the woman who was being beaten and glowing was. What's even more ironic is that Rog still symbolizes justice in their hearts. Although there are many people involved in the Conquest of Naruto plan, not every shield agent knows about the existence of this plan. Except for those who participated in the operation, most of the shield agents didn't know that the relationship between Rog and shield had become so bad that it was irreconcilable. Although Rog never felt that he was a superhero, in the eyes of others, he was a superhero. Just as these shield agents who didn't know the truth were considering whether to help Rog, Nick Fury's voice sounded on the public channel. The fourth Hokage is a traitor, I repeat, the fourth Hokage is a traitor. All fighters in the base take off, don't worry about the collateral damage, kill the fourth Hokage with all your might. After being rescued from the ruins of the office by the shield agents who rushed over, Nick Fury immediately issued the latest order. Now he was too lazy to think about how to explain that Rog was a traitor. He only knew that if he didn't deal with Rog today, then shield would really have no tomorrow. When it's time to be decisive, Nick Fury can be more decisive than anyone else. Although Nick Fury's order came suddenly, the shield agents still carried out the order for the first time. The hangar doors in the river opened one by one, and the Quinjets in the hangar took off one by one. Rog saw this scene, but he didn't stop beating Captain Marvel. The Quinjets couldn't pose a threat, so they took off. But the opportunity to beat Captain Marvel so happily was really gone if he missed it. In the beginning, he just beat Captain Marvel with his monster punch. Then, his fist became a Rasengan. Finally, the Rasengan became the Odama Rasengan. Rog knew that Captain Marvel was taking the opportunity to keep away from the Sanku Wing building, and he also knew that Captain Marvel was accelerating the absorption of the energy of the spiral electromagnetic gun explosion. But, so what? Not to mention whether he could kill Captain Marvel or not, just the pleasure of beating her was worth wasting some time. The energy in Captain Marvel's hands became dimmer and dimmer, and the energy from the spiral electromagnetic gun was finally absorbed by her. As long as she was given a few more seconds, she could completely absorb the energy of the spiral electromagnetic gun. 3 seconds. 2 seconds. 1 second. Carol silently calculated the time, and when the violent energy in her hands was exhausted, when the severe pain caused by the energy erosion disappeared, her eyes flashed with a golden light. The opportunity to fight back has finally arrived. Carol suddenly clenched her fists, and the gorgeous light on her body became even more blazing. However, at this moment, dozens of golden chakra chains poured out from behind Rog, and instantly tied up Captain Marvel. Sealing Jutsu, Diamond Seal. Since mastering Diamond Seal, Rog has been using Diamond Seal as an offensive ninjutsu. But he never forgot the purpose of exchanging for Diamond Seal. Sealing is the real power of Diamond Seal. Chapter 229. How strong is the sealing ability of the Vajra seal? Rog had never personally experienced it, so he wasn't very clear about the limits of this sealing technique. However, Uzumaki Shiniguna, who had just given birth, was able to use the Vajra seal to subdue Kyubi's chakra when she was extremely weak. If a pregnant woman who had just given birth could do this, then the Vajra seal performed by Rog at his peak wouldn't be any worse. Except for her head, Captain Marvel Carol's entire body was tightly bound by chakra chains. She looked like a mummy wrapped in chakra chains as she floated in the air. The moment she was bound by chakra chains, Carol noticed that something was wrong. But it was too late. No matter how she urged the energy in her body, the chakra chains on her body didn't show any signs of loosening. Rog didn't take Carol's resistance to heart at all. The Vajra seal that even Kyubi couldn't break free from wouldn't be so easily destroyed. What's more, the amount of chakra he had now far exceeded that of Uzumaki Shiniguna. He didn't have the physique of Uzumaki, but he had the physique of Hashirama Sennin, which was stronger than Uzumaki's physique. The previous beating was purely to vent the displeasure in his heart. The moment he saw Captain Marvel, he was ready to use the Vajra seal as his trump card. Sure enough, after his violent beating just now, Captain Marvel Carol didn't notice anything wrong at all and even tried to fight him head-on. You don't have a chance. As soon as his voice fell, Rog raised the Calamity pistol and pressed the muzzle against Carol's forehead. Among all the enemies I've encountered so far, you have the strongest defense. Even Warner Protoss's Sea God didn't dare to take my electromagnetic pulse gun with his bare hands, but you are very brave to take two of them at once. But unfortunately, your brain isn't very good. Shield's Quinjet will take off one after another. According to common sense, Rog has no need to talk so much nonsense with Carol. But for some reason, after seeing Carlo's righteous face, he felt an indescribable sense of disgust. Even now, do you still think that you're the righteous one? Even if you beat me, you will not be recognized by the people. They will see your true colors. You will never be a true hero. Marvel Captain Carol said righteously. Ha 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 ha. You Americans are really interesting. Become a hero? Do you think everyone wants to be a superhero under your values? Have you filmed too many Hollywood movies? Do you really think that the United States is the only country in the world? Rog said with a laugh. Although he had lived here for several years, sometimes he really couldn't understand what these Americans were thinking. According to your usual movie routine, should be as arrogant as possible now, and then your brave American soldiers or American heroes will arrive in time to catch me, the evil villain. You will finally get a perfect victory, and the United States will save the world again. Although Rog said this, everyone could see that his words were full of sarcasm. Carol didn't reply and even wanted to turn her head to the other side. However, Rog's right hand suddenly exerted force, and with the muzzle against her forehead, she didn't achieve her little wish of turning her head. Reality is not a movie. The villain dies because of talking too much only appears in movies. So, goodbye. As soon as his voice fell, Rog pulled the trigger and fired the last spiral electromagnetic gun bullet in the magazine. The spiral electromagnetic gun bullet fired at this distance. Even if he invented this ninjutsu and made the bullet himself, he would still be affected by the power of the explosion. But what does it matter? If you want to be a villain, you have to be a crazy villain. Rumble. The huge silver-white ball of light exploded, and the rapidly expanding silver-white ball of light not only swallowed his and Carol's figures, but also swallowed the Quinjets flying towards him. The terrifying energy storm swept everything around it like a level 13 hurricane. Buildings, trees, cars, pedestrians, the shock wave generated by the explosion lifted everything that could be lifted, the earth shook, and the houses collapsed. Although the Sanku Wing building was far away, it was also affected by the power of the explosion. The entire building shook violently, and all the glass on the outer wall burst, and cracks of different sizes appeared in every corner of the building. The Sanku Wing building that was hit by the shock wave of the explosion was not the worst building. The hangar located under the river not only experienced an earthquake-like vibration, but the rushing river also rushed into the hangar like a waterfall. Amidst this disastrous scene, the only good news was that the explosion came and went quickly. After a few seconds, the energy storm caused by the spiral electromagnetic gun completely dissipated, and the sky began to return to its original appearance. At this time, except for Rog and Carol, who were still floating in the air, there were no other fighters in the sky as far as the eye could see. All the Quinjets crashed. Carol, who was originally exuding a brilliant light, tilted her head weakly at this time. Her forehead, eyes, nostrils, and mouth all flowed out bright red blood. Looking at Captain Marvel's appearance at this time, Rog couldn't help but sigh. This kind of defense was really like cheating. Taking a spiral electromagnetic gun head-on with his forehead, he didn't even get his head blown off. Even Rog couldn't do this kind of thing. Although he didn't get a headshot, Carol wasn't much better now. She was completely unconscious. As for whether there were internal injuries such as a concussion, Rog couldn't see it, and he didn't care at all. Since one spiral electromagnetic gun wasn't enough, he would use a few more. The reason why he asked AI Chui to build the disaster pistol was to take this situation into consideration. Compared to using ninjutsu bullets were indeed more troublesome. However, ninjutsu bullets also had an advantage that couldn't be ignored, and that was that they could be prepared in advance. After opening the magazine of the Calamity pistol, Rog stuffed the last 3 spiral electromagnetic gun bullets he had prepared into it. When he left Niederweiler, he put 9 spiral electromagnetic gun bullets and a lot of other ninjutsu bullets in his ammo bag. He didn't expect that not long after returning to Earth, he would use more than half of the spiral electromagnetic gun bullets. After reloading the remaining 3 electromagnetic pulse cannon bullets, he aimed the gun at Captain Marvel Carol again. It seems that this time, I, the evil villain, won. Rog pulled the trigger again, and the silver-white ball of light that just ended flashed again, like a silver-white sun hanging high in the sky. Chapter 230. The terrifying energy storm swept around again, and the Sanku Wing building and the hangar at the bottom of the river were once again hit by a natural disaster. When the silver-white light dissipated, Captain Marvel's head completely disappeared in front of Rog. Without the protection of the energy field, Carol is just a superpower with an amazing physique. However, no matter how strong her physique is, she can't resist the head-on attack of the spiral electromagnetic gun. Finally, it's over. There is no life in Captain Marvel's body, and there is no energy reaction. Right now, she was just a headless corpse. If it weren't for the chakra chain protecting her body would have disappeared in the terrifying explosion of the spiral electromagnetic gun. Putting away the disaster pistol with 2 spiral electromagnetic gun bullets left, Rog took out the summon scroll he carried with him and threw Captain Marvel's body into it. Don't think that you can be free when you die. An enemy of Captain Marvel's level, even if it's a corpse, has extremely high value. For example, Captain Marvel's Edo Tensei. Of course, Rog will definitely not give her the Edo Tensei now. The Edo Tensei scroll is worth 100 ninja coins, and it costs 500 ninja coins to exchange for the Edo Tensei ninjutsu. Although Captain Marvel still has some value, it's not to the point where she needs to be reincarnated now. After throwing Captain Marvel's body into the summon scroll, Rog flew towards the crumbling Sanku Wing building. By now, it's almost time to end this battle. At this time, although S.H.I.E.L.D. still has some resistance, when Rog came to the Sanku Wing building, no S.H.I.E.L.D. agent dared to attack him. Even those who are S.H.I.E.L.D. agents on the surface, but are actually Hydra spies, didn't dare to attack him. A few minutes later, in an office that was slightly less damaged, Rog saw the expressionless Ross and Nick Fury in a wheelchair. After his legs were broken by Rog, he completely lost the ability to move. Because of Rog's request, he, who was lying in the operating room receiving emergency treatment, came here in a wheelchair to discuss the final armistice agreement. Although it was said to be a discussion, it was actually Rog's unilateral notification. Rog didn't waste time with the two of them and directly stated his request. Return his savings to him, and give him compensation equal to the amount of his savings for emotional distress. The $1.8 billion was his hard-earned money over the past few years. No matter what, he had to get the money back. The Thunderbolt Secret Service squad was merged into Konoha. Their personnel, funds, equipment, and everything else belonged to Konoha. In return, he would not kill the Thunder Secret Service team, nor would he visit Ross and the military bigwigs behind him. All the damage caused by this battle will be borne by S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D. will be disbanded on the surface, and then all personnel, equipment, and other materials will belong to Konoha, just like the Thunder agents. As for how S.H.I.E.L.D. will deal with these aftermath matters, that is S.H.I.E.L.D.'s own business. If S.H.I.E.L.D. likes it, they can also put all the blame on Hydra. After the disbandment of S.H.I.E.L.D., the military bosses behind Ross and S.H.I.E.L.D.'s political resources jointly proposed to the White House to establish Konoha Intelligence Agency to replace S.H.I.E.L.D., and recommended Rog as the director. Rog's 4 conditions were more stringent than the previous one. In particular, the request to establish Konoha Intelligence Agency was completely beyond the expectations of Ross and Nick Fury. Rog wants to play the game himself, instead of being a chess piece as before. The first condition is fine, but the latter ones are a bit too much. Ross tried to control his tone as much as possible to express that he was discussing rather than refusing. Let me correct your thoughts, this is not a discussion with you, this is a notice. If you want a truce, this is the content of the truce agreement. If you still want to fight, I will accompany you at any time. Rog was too lazy to argue with them. Anyway, these 4 points were his requirements. If they agree, then everything will be fine. If they don't agree, then they will continue to fight. Even if we agree, the White House will not agree. It is not so easy to establish such an institution, and it is also an institution with law enforcement power. Nick Fury explained, not to mention the establishment of Konoha Intelligence Agency, even S.H.I.E.L.D. is still subject to more checks and balances and restrictions. That's your business. You can pass on what I'm about to say to the people behind you. What your S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't dare to manage, we Konoha will manage. What your military doesn't dare to kill, we Konoha will kill. In a word, Konoha will manage what S.H.I.E.L.D. and the military can manage, and we will manage what S.H.I.E.L.D. and the military can't manage. Such a Konoha, do you want it or not? Rog stood up directly, looked down at Nick Fury and Ross, and slowly said, "Give me a final reply before 12 noon tomorrow. You can start to think about it now." After that, Rog left the office directly with the Flying Thunder God and returned to the forest created by the Tree World. The team of Abomination, Punisher, Moonlight Stone, and Kyuubi defeated the remaining enemies without any suspense, and the whole forest could be seen everywhere with burning flames and corpses. According to Punisher, at the end of the battle, Red Tank, who was originally in the enemy camp, also inexplicably joined their side. Although the battle was a bit difficult, they eventually wiped out all the enemies present and rescued the unconscious Sky. Let's go to the headquarters of Thunder's Secret Service team. With Red Tank and Moonlight Stone opening the way, Rog and others easily entered the headquarters of Thunder's Secret Service team and lived there. Rog has no plans to return to New York for the time being, or rather, he may not return to New York for a long time. Although his 4 requirements are a bit harsh, if nothing unexpected happens, Ross and Nick Fury will eventually choose to accept them. After handing the unconscious Sky to the medical staff of the headquarters, Rog went to have a simple and rough conversation with Red Tank. Although Red Tank has no plans to submit to Rog, he doesn't mind joining Konoha, as long as Rog agrees to let Abomination play with him. For Red Tank's small request, Rog didn't refuse and directly agreed. As for whether Abomination will have an opinion on this, it's not in his consideration at all. If Abomination doesn't agree, he will give Abomination to Dr. Connors. Red Tank and Dr. Connors, Abomination should know how to choose. After dealing with Red Tank's problem, Rog returned to the room where he lived before, and then saw Moonlight Shakala in the room. What's the matter? Moonlight Shakala was still wearing the previous battle clothes, and the blood-stained tights made her curvy figure show a different kind of charm. Okay, no need to say anything, wash yourself and lie in bed. The next morning, Rog left the base alone and came to the Sanku Wing building again. He didn't want to get up so early, but Ross called him early in the morning and asked him to go to the Sanku Wing. Although Ross didn't say anything on the phone, Rog has guessed their final decision. Or rather, he had already seen their decision from the news report on TV. Chapter 231. Sanku Building, in an office. Ross and Nick Fury sat opposite Rog. In front of Rog, there was a bottle of Macallan Riley 55 whiskey that originally belonged to Alexander Pierce. The big screen on the wall was broadcasting the news about the fall of the helicarrier. As Rog expected, S.H.I.E.L.D. threw all the blame to Hydra. And after a night of investigation, Nick Fury had to admit that S.H.I.E.L.D., which he managed, was indeed invaded by Hydra. From World Security Council Minister Alexander Pierce to the operatives of the operation team. At least one-third of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s staff are Hydra's people. This level of invasion, even if you see it with your own eyes, will feel incredible. In view of the pressure from all sides, Nick Fury thought seriously for a night and finally agreed to Rog's request. S.H.I.E.L.D.'s disbandment is better than S.H.I.E.L.D.'s destruction. As for the name S.H.I.E.L.D., let's give it up. Nick Fury agreed to Rog's request on behalf of S.H.I.E.L.D., and Ross naturally has no opinion. Compared with S.H.I.E.L.D., the military forces represented by Ross are more happy to see this happen. Although the establishment of Konoha's intelligence agency will divide some of the military's power, Konoha's intelligence agency is obviously not so ambitious compared to the current S.H.I.E.L.D. And as Rog said yesterday, the military also needs an organization that can help them solve their troublesome enemies. As for the overbearingness shown by Konoha's intelligence agency, it is more of Rog's personal overbearingness. Even if Konoha's intelligence agency really becomes a S.H.I.E.L.D. in the future, or even far surpasses S.H.I.E.L.D., that is a matter of the future. At least at this stage, the military does not have much opinion on the establishment of Konoha's intelligence agency. The most important thing is that even if they have opinions now, they can't come up with the high-level combat power to fight against Rog. The military's people don't have as many tricks as S.H.I.E.L.D., and the huge gap in strength is enough for them to make wise choices. In the following time, Rog and the other two discussed the specific affairs of the Konoha Intelligence Agency, and then Rog left the Sanku building. Rog was not in the mood to care about the procedures. He only wanted to know the results. Time flew by, and 3 months passed in the blink of an eye. S.H.I.E.L.D. officially announced its disbandment 3 months ago. The reason for disbanding was to take full responsibility for the fall of the helicarrier and the invasion of Hydra. The Thunder Agents team was also disbanded. The reason for the disbandment was that they lost 3 members to assist S.H.I.E.L.D. in stopping Hydra's evil plan, so the team was forced to disband. As for the remaining 2 members, Red Tank and Moonlight Stone, they joined Konoha's intelligence bureau led by Yondaime Rog. The establishment of the Konoha Intelligence Agency is the most sensational news in the last 3 months. With the establishment of the Konoha Intelligence Agency, the official explanation for Rog's death was also given. In order to disintegrate the evil organization Hydra, Yondaime Rog faked his death and sneaked into Hydra, and in the helicarrier incident in Washington, he stopped Hydra's plan to attack the White House and the Pentagon with helicarrier. For this reason, Rog received the highest Medal of Honor awarded by the current president. Of course, Rog himself did not appear at the scene, and he only arranged a shadow clone to go there. And even the shadow clone didn't stay there for too long. After receiving the medal, he left directly with the Flying Thunder God. Although the establishment of the Konoha Intelligence Agency has received official support, the support of the public is also not bad. But there are still many media and MPs who have raised objections. Especially when Konoha began to wipe out the other branches of Hydra, the opposition reached its peak directly. Although the Hydra led by Alexander Pierce was eliminated, other Hydra branches were not damaged much. Those opposition voices are basically smoke bombs made by these Hydra branches. In this regard, ROG let everyone in the world see what it means to be domineering and strong. All suspected Hydra members were arrested, and those who resisted were killed on the spot. As for what the criteria for suspicion is, the final interpretation belongs to the Konoha Intelligence Agency. For the first time, the United States, which advocates freedom and democracy, saw what it means to be domineering and arrogant. In the beginning, some people tried to stop the Konoha Intelligence Agency with public opinion and the so-called public opinion. But after Konoha's action team performed several missions, everything quieted down, at least on the surface. With S.H.I.E.L.D.'s intelligence network and technical support, military equipment, plus Konoha's enhanced warriors, Konoha's action team armed to the teeth was born. Roger did not accept all the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents and Thunder Secret Service personnel. Most of the people who were left behind were logistical technicians. As for the combatants, the entire Konoha Intelligence Agency added up to only 100. However, these carefully selected combatants were not only subjected to ROG's Seal of Kismet, but all of them also received the transformation of extremists. Punisher, Abomination, Red Tank, and Moonlight Stone, plus more than 100 extremist fighters, swept through all the investigated Hydra strongholds. Even the Death Warrior team led by Hydra's chief male model Winter Soldier was no match for Konoha's intelligence agency. In addition to Konoha's intelligence agency, in the past 3 months, what ROG has done the most is to constantly train Sky, who has awakened as a mutant. S.H.I.E.L.D.'s obelisk has now become ROG's personal item, and Sky has successfully awakened the ability to control shock waves with his help. After 3 months of training, the current Sky was no longer the hacker without much combat power, but a professional agent with superpowers. In the exclusive training room of Konoha's intelligence agency, ROG is carrying out daily combat training with Sky. Water Release, Water Dragon Bullet. Fire Release, Great Fireball. ROG waved his hand, and a water dragon more than 10 meters long appeared out of thin air, directly attacking Sky not far away. At the same time, a huge fireball with a diameter of more than 3 meters also flew toward Sky. Although ROG attacked casually, Sky did not dare to be careless. Faced with the incoming water dragon and fireball, Sky decisively raised her hands, and 2 invisible shock waves gushed out from her palms and rushed directly towards the water dragon and fireball. Bang! Bang! The imposing water dragon and fireball were broken at the same time. The water dragon turned into water droplets flying all over the sky, and the fireball exploded like fireworks. Your reaction is too slow. Sky, who had broken the water dragon and fireball, just showed a smile when ROG's voice sounded behind her, and a huge force hit her back, knocking her out. Chapter 232. In order to let Sky grow up as soon as possible, ROG sometimes used a bit more strength. Of course, this strength is for Sky. For ROG, this kind of attack power is not heavy at all. If Sky had fought with Hulk, Saul, and the others, he would know what a real heavy punch was. Even so, Sky, who was hit in the back by ROG, still flew out uncontrollably. It wasn't until she flew out 5 or 6 meters that she fell heavily to the ground. After falling to the ground, Sky was lying motionless on the ground, looking like she was completely knocked out. Looking at Sky, who seemed to have fainted, ROG didn't immediately step forward, but directly spouted a flame from his mouth. Catan, Fire Dragon. The violent flame like a flying dragon flew towards Sky, who fell to the ground. The hot temperature made the surrounding air hazy. The flame of the fire dragon can be divided into 3 directions, front, left, and right to attack the enemy, and the direction of the fire dragon can be further controlled by chakra. It is an extremely difficult ninjutsu to avoid. The reason why Rog chose this ninjutsu is just in case. In case Sky really fainted, he can also change the direction of the flame for the first time to avoid Sky being hit. Although Sky was only 5 or 6 meters away from him, Rog was still very confident in his control of chakra. Sure enough, it was as he guessed. When the flame was about to hit Sky, Sky, who was lying on the ground, burst out a powerful shock wave visible to the naked eye, directly shaking off all the flame. This shock wave not only shook off the flame of the fire dragon, but also attacked Rog without any reduction in power. The shock wave came fast, but Rog's reaction was faster. The shock wave hasn't arrived yet, he had already used lightning body flicker to leave the place. The powerful shock wave passed through the weak electric current left by him when he used lightning body flicker and hit the wall dozens of meters away. Boom! The wall hit by the shock wave exploded like it was hit by a missile. The broken bricks splashed everywhere. Sky, who had just got up, didn't have time to turn around. Rog suddenly appeared in front of her. The power of the attack is not bad, but it's best not to have the idea of playing dead in a fight. Most enemies like to use bullets to confirm the target's life or death, so playing dead can easily become a real death. Although Sky has awakened her superpower, her actual combat experience is almost 0. This is the reason why Rog is willing to train her for a period of time every day. Letting Sky be the only one in charge of intelligence gathering was a classic waste of resources. Before, he didn't ask her to go out in the field because she doesn't have enough power to protect herself. Let's stop here for today. If you still want to train, you can look for Frank. He should be in the base right now. After that, Roger left the training room and returned to his office. Haven't found the whereabouts of Baron Strake and Scepter? Glancing at the report in his hand, Rog asked the assistant beside him without raising his head. Hokage-sama, we have cleaned up all the Hydra strongholds provided by the intelligence department, and for the time being, we have not found the whereabouts of Baron Strake and Scepter. After Erika's death, Rog had to find a new assistant. His current assistant is a former S.H.I.E.L.D. agent named Sharon Carter. Sharon Carter didn't have any superpowers, and he wasn't a special assistant before. He was S.H.I.E.L.D.'s Agent 13. The reason why he chose Sharon Carter as his new assistant is purely because her surname is Carter. Yes, Sharon Carter is the niece of Peggy Carter, the first love of the American team captain Rogers. If Rog hadn't crossed over, Sharon Carter might have become Roger's new girlfriend after a while. However, before this emotional line of Rogers began, it was completely cut off by Rog. Superheroes are going to save the world. How can they be distracted by such trivial things as love and love? Let the intelligence department continue to investigate, especially the base in Sokovia, carry out a carpet search again. On the surface, most of Konoha's intelligence agency is dealing with Hydra all over the world. But in fact, Rog focused his investigation on Loki's scepter and Baron Straker. However, because this butterfly from another world was fluttering more and more, the future in his memory was also changing crazily. For example, Baron Strake and Scepter, who should have been in Sokovia, are missing. He wasn't particularly concerned about where Baron Straker and Loki's scepter had gone. What he cares about is whether Scarlet Witch Walter has appeared now. Scarlet Witch Walter is the key to opening his Mangekyo Sharingan. Without Walter, he can only choose to exchange Mangekyo Sharingan from the system. That's 300 ninja coins. Wasting 300 ninja coins just for a chance to open the portal is not worth it at all. So he will never choose to exchange from the system until the last moment. Walter is his first choice. Sir, why don't we communicate with the Avengers led by Mr. Stark? In recent months, they have also wiped out a lot of Hydra bases, and Baron Strake and Scepter may have fallen into their hands. Sharon gave her suggestion. Although S.H.I.E.L.D. was disbanded, Nick Fury somehow convinced Tawny, and then with the help of Tawny's funds, he incorporated a large number of S.H.I.E.L.D. members who were dismissed by ROG. Now, Tawny's Stark building in New York has become the headquarters of the Avengers, and Tawny has also become the nominal leader of the Avengers. In terms of personal friendship, ROG and Tawny still maintain a friend relationship. But Konoha's intelligence agency and the Avengers led by them have become two opposing organizations to some extent. Team America's Rogers, Dr. Banner, Black Widow Natasha, and Hawkeye chose to be reunited. Thor chose to be neutral and belongs to the shared staff of Konoha and the Avengers. I'll think about it, you go out first. Since the establishment of Konoha's intelligence agency, the contact between ROG and Tawny has become less and less. Is Loki's scepter really in Tawny's hands? Just as ROG was wondering whether to call Tawny to ask, in the laboratory on the top floor of the Stark building, Tawny was constantly tempting Dr. Banner. I want to use this power on the Ultron program, but JRVIS can't download such a dense data schematic. The next time the aliens invade, they won't even be able to break through the defense line. I don't want to hear nonsense like, who is right and who is wrong. What I see is a safe world under armor defense. Tawny gave full play to his language talent and continued to persuade Dr. Banner. This fragile blue planet needs Ultron. This will be the peace of our era. Think about it. Looking at Tawny's slightly lonely back, Dr. Banner began to move. A world where he can drink cocktails, lie on a sunny beach, and turn his skin color bronze instead of green. A world where he doesn't need Hulk, a world where he doesn't need to think about Veronica. Chapter 233. ROG didn't know what happened on the top floor of Stark building. After thinking about it for a few minutes, he finally didn't call Tawny. Anyway, he has waited for so long, and it doesn't matter if he waits a little longer. After making up his mind, ROG used the phone on his desk to give new instructions to Sharon Carter. Search for the whereabouts of Savant Maximov and Pietro Maximov with all their strength. As for the whereabouts of Baron Straker and Loki's scepter, they don't need to worry about it for the time being. As long as they can find Walter, everything else is a bonus. With ROG's order, the intelligence network of Konoha's intelligence agency began to operate frantically. Konoha never stopped searching for Walter and Pietro. However, compared with Hydra, who is a bigger target and easier to locate, the intelligence of the two of them is obviously much less. Time passed day by day, and after 3 days of sleepless searching, the intelligence department finally gave a slightly valuable piece of information. In the center of Sokovia, young people suspected to be Walter and Pietro were seen. But it is not certain whether these two young people are Walter and Pietro themselves. The Punisher has now rushed to Sokovia with a team of desperados for final confirmation. After reading the report in his hand, ROG couldn't help but frown. Baron Straker's secret base in Sokovia was Konoha's first target. As early as 3 months ago, that base was breached by Konoha. But in that castle-like base, Konoha didn't find any news about Baron Straker and Loki's scepter. Even slightly high-tech energy weapons were not found, let alone information about the Human Enhancement Project. He thought that Baron Straker had moved the research base elsewhere, but now it seems that Baron Straker has more than one base in Sokovia. If Baron Straker's research base was in another country, Walter and Pietro would not have appeared in Sokovia at this time, especially when Konoha's intelligence department is searching for them all over the world. Although Konoha Intelligence Agency is a new organization that has been established for more than 3 months, the predecessor of Konoha Intelligence Department is the S.H.I.E.L.D. Intelligence Center. Walter and Pietro were not professional spies like Bucky. Even if they had superpowers, it was impossible for them to return to Sokovia without alerting Konoha's intelligence network. Therefore, the only reasonable explanation was that they had never left Sokovia. Go and check if the Avengers have carried out any missions near Sokovia recently. If Fu Lian had just recently carried out a mission in Sokovia, then everything would make sense. Baron Straker had more than one secret base in Sokovia. One of them was destroyed by Konoha, but there was no useful information in it. However, the Fu Lian discovered the remaining secret base of Baron Strake, and recently destroyed this secret base that wasn't in Konoha's information. Because the base was destroyed, Walter and Pietro, who had been searching for 3 months, appeared in the center of Sokovia at this time. Within a few minutes, Sharon obtained the complete mission records of the past month from the intelligence department. Of course, this was only what Konoha's intelligence department could investigate. As for whether or not the Avengers had secretly done other missions, only the members of the Avengers knew about this. Just as he guessed, the Avengers had carried out a secret mission in Sokovia a few days ago. As for the specific content of the mission, Konoha's intelligence department did not find any more information. The only thing that could be confirmed was that the 5 superheroes in the Avengers had participated in that mission. Have Moonlight Stone and Abomination bring 2 teams of desperados over to assist the Punishers in capturing them. Try to be gentle when capturing them. Don't hurt them. After looking at the time of the Avengers operation, Rog could basically confirm that it was Walter and Pietro who had appeared in Sokovia. Sharon passed down Rog's order. However, not long after Sharon left the office, Rog's private phone rang. This was the private phone he had always used. Other than a few people who were close to him, not many people knew his number. The number that appeared on the screen was a number he had never seen before. Mr. Rog. Mr. Stark is in danger. Please, take care of Mr. Stark. Rog was no stranger to the voice on the phone. It was Jarvis's voice. However, compared to the previous Jarvis, the current Jarvis seemed to have a system failure. He spoke intermittently. What happened? Ultron. Ultron. Before Jarvis could finish speaking, the phone was hung up. If it were anyone else, they might be confused. However, for Rog, who had seen the future, Jarvis had given him enough information. Under his changes, the future of this world had changed a lot, but Tawny still managed to get Ultron out in the end. Was this the so-called self-healing ability of fate? After Jarvis hung up, Rog sighed helplessly and dialed Tawny's number. In any case, he and Tawny were still friends. If he could help, he would help. However, just a few seconds after he dialed the phone, his mobile phone suddenly lost signal, and then completely crashed. Is this an invasion? After hearing the name Ultron, Rog knew that this time things would not be so simple. But what he didn't expect was that Ultron's reaction would be so fast. This kind of enemy who can make full use of the internet is really annoying. Obviously, Ultron didn't just invade his mobile phone. A few seconds after his mobile phone crashed, the entire Konoha headquarters was invaded. All external contact methods were forcibly disconnected. The network was disconnected, the satellite couldn't be connected, and even the power supply system of the headquarters was cut off. The brightly lit Konoha headquarters was suddenly shrouded in darkness. The emergency lights became the only light source in the headquarters. Sama, we are under attack. Sharon Carter came to the office for the first time, and the document in his right hand turned into a pistol. Inform everyone that it is a temporary exercise. In addition, let Sky join the technical department to rebuild the system firewall. After the system is restored, contact the Punishers first and let them be careful of additional enemies. I'm going back to New York now, I'll leave this to you. After that, Rog took a deep breath, then connected to New York's Thor and directly left the base with the Flying Thunder God. Chapter 234. Rog has no interest in Ultron. Similarly, he has no interest in the genjutsu that combines J, and the Spirit Gem. In fact, he was only interested in Walter and the Soul Gem. After the Battle of New York, he left a permanent Flying Thor technique in the Stark building. But unfortunately, ever since he left behind the Flying Lightning God technique, he hadn't come to Stark building even once. After the Flying Thunder God, he came to the Stark building in an instant and then saw the party held by Tani. At this time, although he was not wearing the iconic Haori of the fourth Hokage, he immediately attracted the attention of the audience when he arrived at the banquet hall. The fourth Hokage, why is he here? The director of Konoha's intelligence agency actually came to the party held by the Avengers. Interesting. Is Konoha going to work with the Avengers? People whose hands are stained with the blood of innocents are not embarrassed to call themselves superheroes, hee. After seeing Rog, various thoughts emerged in the minds of the guests present. Some were amazed, some were emotional, and some were contemptuous. Rog ignored these guests and set his eyes on Tani in the distance, and then came in front of Tani with a body flicker technique. Rog, why are you here? Like those guests, Tani was also full of doubts about Rog's appearance. JRVIS informed me that there is a problem with your Ultron. After hearing the name of Ultron, Tani's face suddenly changed. The existence of Ultron is top secret. Even in the Avengers, only he, Dr. Banner, and JRVIS know about Ultron. Rog knows about the existence of Ultron and came in person, which means that there is a real problem with Ultron. Wait a minute, I'll contact JRVIS. Although the relationship between Konoha and the Avengers is not good, the personal relationship between Tani and Rog is quite good. And Tani doesn't think that Rog will joke with him about Ultron. Tani took out a phone that looked like transparent glass. Then, there was nothing else. Jarvis couldn't be contacted. No, it wasn't that he couldn't contact Jarvis, but that the phone in Tani's hand had completely crashed. It was like a real piece of glass, and there was no response. Tani, what happened? After seeing Rog's arrival, the captain of the American team noticed that something was wrong and immediately came to their side. There's a small problem, so we have to end the party early. Tani didn't tell Captain America about Ultron, and now wasn't the time to explain it. Alright, I'll go inform the guests. Rog looked at Tani and Rog with a complicated expression. Then, he turned around and left, intending to inform the guests to leave. However, he had only taken a few steps when an accident happened. Boom! 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 Explosions rang out from different corners of the hall at the same time. Orange-red flames exploded with a loud bang, and the shockwave from the explosion instantly sent several guests flying. It seems that there's no need to inform them. At the moment of the explosion, Rog took Tani away from his original position, allowing Tani to avoid a cannonball that was originally flying towards him. Is Ultron in the laboratory on the top floor? After putting down Tani in his hand, Rog asked directly. Yes, it's on the top floor, and Loki's scepter is there too. Be careful, if you are killed by the robots you developed, I will laugh at you for the rest of my life. After that, Rog directly used lightning body blink and left. With the sound of the explosion, the Iron Man Legion robots built by Tani came to the hall one by one, and then killed everyone they saw. Rog didn't waste time on these robots and directly broke through the tempered glass of the outer wall, using the super light rock technique to fly to the laboratory on the top floor. From the explosion to the laboratory on the top floor, it took less than 10 seconds. However, when he came to the laboratory on the top floor, what he saw was still the robots of Tani's Iron Man Legion. Ultron and Loki's scepter had long disappeared. To be precise, only Loki's scepter was missing. Ultron is now among these robots of the Iron Man Legion. You shouldn't have come. The robot at the front made a strange sound that was obviously composed of electronic sounds, which was the voice of Ultron. Whether I should have come or not, you don't have the right to say. Ultron didn't go forward, but raised his right hand and silently looked at his steel right hand. I can feel that you are the same as me, and you also have that kind of power. Rog knew what Ultron meant by the same kind. It was nothing more than the gem of reality on his body. In Ultron's view, Rog, who has the gem of reality, and he, who is born in the gem of mind, are, to a certain extent, the same kind of existence. No, we are not the same kind, and we can't become the same kind. Rog directly refused Ultron's approach of climbing up. We can be the same kind as long as you want. You are now looking for Walter Maximoff. I can give her to you as a kind gift between friends. What do you think? Ultron invaded the system of Konoha's headquarters and naturally knew the order Rog had issued. He may not know why Rog cares so much about Walter, but he doesn't mind giving Walter to Rog in exchange for the so-called kindness of human beings. Give it to me, ha 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 ha. What qualifications do you have to decide Walter's fate, because you don't even have your own body, or because you can only hide in the network like a thief? As soon as his voice fell, a long spear made of lightning appeared in Rog's right hand and instantly hit Ultron's body and then cut him in half. Raiton, Chidori Agi Spear.